Chapter 752. The Final Match, 7. Li Yaoxiang angrily released his hand and shouted at Bai Qining. Grandmaster Rong Yun is present. How could you be so impudent? A cold light flashed through the depths of Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes, and slanting a glance at Bai Qining, with a cold, clear voice he said, "Let go." Just one soft phrase seemed to carry an endless amount of deterrence force. Bai Qining gritted his teeth and ultimately tossed the Jade Lake's ferry aside. However, he did not walk away. Rather, he towered over and glared at Li Yaoyao, who he had thrown down onto the ground. At this moment, the surrounding masses glared at Bai Qining, the hatred in their eyes suddenly rising. He dared to be this boorish to their goddess. Really was too despicable. A pity, their strengths were not strong, and they also feared the Baichen family's fighting prowess, so no one dared to move. Grandmaster Rong Yun indifferently looked at Li Yaoyao. "You can speak?" With Li Yaoxiang's support, Li Yaoyao slowly stood up and raised her head. She looked at Bai Qining, her gaze shooting out a very hateful and vicious radiance. She suddenly smiled and leaned close to the side of Bai Qining's ear. She lowered her voice and blew out. "You want to know Su Luo, that girl's, whereabouts? Is it because of Nangong Luyun, or is it because of you, yourself?" Her tone was very soft, seeming not to be there. However, it brought an unprecedented shock to Bai Qining. His entire body suddenly stood in place like a statue. He bit his lower lip, and the fists at his side were tightly clenched. Some matters he deliberately ignored, deliberately ran away from, were sharply pointed out by Li Yaoyao. Immediately, his heart had nowhere to escape and could only directly face this gloomy fact. "Li Yaoyao, what nonsense are you talking about? Answer the question that was asked. Quickly speak." Bai Qining very fiercely glared at Li Yaoyao. That vengeful gaze seemed as if it was about to swallow her whole. And at this moment, Lan Xian and Anya Ming were both somewhat silent. They both silently took a glance at Bai Qining. Bai Qining knew that if it were to continue like this, it would not be good. As a result, Bai Qining took a deep breath, restraining his mood. His pair of eyes coldly glared at her. "Grandmaster Rong Yun is watching you. Quickly get to the main point." Li Yaoyao's beautiful eyebrows rose slightly. She looked at Bai Qining, full of smiles. Originally, she was merely probing a bit. She never would have thought that Bai Qining, this guy's reaction was so big. He actually really... Haha, this was truly too amusing. She originally wanted to see a situation of brothers destroying each other. A pity, a pity, a pity Su Luo, that loathsome girl, was already dead. The Jade Lake's fairy unregretfully shook her head. A pity. The Jade Lake's fairy smilingly looked at Bai Qining. "It is impossible for Su Luo to ever come out. Bai Qining, you will be sad and depressed for a lifetime. Oh. What nonsense are you saying?" Bai Qining charged forward with one hand, lifting up the Jade Lake's fairies by her collar. Not only Bai Qining, Lan Xian and Anya Ming both went up to surround the Jade Lake's fairy, trapping her in the middle. At this very moment, having avenged her hatred, what could Li Yaoyao possibly be scared of? Li Yaoyao pushed away Bai Qining and fixed her close. Afterwards, towards Bai Qining, who was tottering, she coldly said, "I said Su Luo has already died inside. It's impossible for her to ever come out. Now, did you hear it clearly enough?" Slap. Just when Li Yaoyao said these words, a sharp and clear slapping sound came from her face. Suddenly, 5 scarlet fingerprints appeared on Li Yaoyao's tender and pink skin. Li Yaoyao was infuriated until she nearly went mad. "That is impossible." Bai Qinying's eyes shot out with millennium-old ice-like light. It was so cold that it made people's heart tremble. This kind of vengeful and fierce gaze was like a trapped beast. It immediately made Li Yaoyao shrink back. Her plans of charging at Bai Qining disappeared in an instant. Chapter 753. News of Su Luo's death. 1. Lan Xian and Anya Ming also glared fixedly at the Jade Lake's fairy. They were itching to squeeze her neck and interrogate her. Impossible. How could Su Luo die? If she died and Nangong returned, how could they explain? If you do not believe it, then I can't do anything about it. The Jade Lake's fairy coldly snorted. Afterwards, She turned around and walked towards Grandmaster Rong Yun. Bai Qinying's trio immediately stiffened in place. This was not real. Absolutely not real. Luo Bai Qinying roared in a heart-wrenching manner. Afterwards, he charged towards the starting to close purplish golden gates, charging directly inside. Bai Qin, Lan Xian and An Yeming also followed behind Bai Qinying's body. However, Bai Qinying's speed was faster than both of them. Bai Qinying was as fast as a stream of thin smoke. Just as his body had passed through, the purplish golden gates closed with a heavy bang sound, and blocking Lan Xian and An Yeming outside the door. Bai Qinying had charged inside? Then, how would he come out? Grandmaster Rong Yun. The two of them gazed at Grandmaster Rong Yun with appealing expressions. However, Grandmaster Rong Yun's expression right now, no one could see clearly. His face was clear and cold. He lightly raised his sleeve and waved his hand. Let him go. Only, the always completely indifferent him now acted out of character. His remote and cold gaze looked at the Jade Lake's ferry. He frowned. Care to tell us the situation inside? Hearing this, Lan Xian and An Yeming's deeply cold gazes stared fixedly at Li Yaoyao. Their eyes were filled with a scathing, murderous intent. They wished they could swallow Li Yaoyao's soul and skin her alive. They vowed that if something truly happened to Su Luo, and if Bai Qinying also met the same fate, the Jade Lakesley family would never have peace. Now, everyone's gaze was cast towards Li Yaoyao. After all, what happened inside? Only she was clear about it. Li Yaoyao stared blankly for a short time, following which she assumed a lovely, pitiful, and having been wronged appearance. Su Luo, she was too despicable. Inside, she wanted to steal away the fire source stones in my hand. With the help of her spirit pet, how could I beat them? After gaining many sympathetic gazes, the Jade Lake's fairy's nose gave a few sniffles, then continued. Luckily, the heavens have eyes. At the crucial point, she disturbed the demon boss inside the demon cave. However, Su Luo thought that having her spirit pet, she would be unrivaled under heaven. Consequently, she started to fight with the demon boss. The result, as she continued to speak, Li Yaoyao's face revealed a frightened expression. The result, who would have thought that the demon boss was so strong? He released a countless number of thunder and lightning bolts, finally directly burning Su Luo to death. You are speaking nonsense. Lan Xian was so angry that he snarled and roared at her. Luolua's speed is extremely fast. If you were burned to death, then she still wouldn't have been burned to death. An Yeming coldly nodded his sharp eyebrows. His eyes coldly glistened like frost and snow as he stared fixedly at Li Yaoyao. Do you dare to vow that every sentence you said is true? Li Yaoyao was just about to speak, but An Yeming cut in. Use your own life to vow. If Su Luo is still alive, then you must commit suicide by slitting your own throat. Do you dare to swear or not? A haze flashed through Li Yaoyao's beautiful eyes. This kind of oath, how to swear upon it? As expected, An Yeming was really difficult to deal with. He heard the loophole in her words. However, so what? In any case, Su Luo was already dead. Fine. Li Yaoyao raised her right hand and seriously said, I, Li Yaoyao, personally saw Su Luo killed by an explosion. This is the absolute truth. If it contained a lie, I will commit suicide by slitting my throat in front of everyone. She had personally seen Su Luo, that loathsome girl, being surrounded by the blaze from the spirit pinball's explosion. If like this, she still did not die, then there really was something wrong. As a result, Li Yaoyao firmly believed that Su Luo had already died. An Yeming originally thought that Li Yaoyao would not dare to make the vow. This way, he could take the opportunity to interrogate her. However, he never imagined that Li Yaoyao would actually so straightforwardly make the vow. Chapter 754, News of Su Luo's Death, 2. What did this prove? This proved that Su Luo had really met with a mishap inside. Otherwise, with Li Yaoyao's cautious personality, how could she make such a poisonous vow in front of everybody? An Yeming and Lan Xian exchanged a look. Both of them saw an alarmed expression in each other's eyes. Something bad had happened to Su Luo. If Nangong came back and found out about this matter, Both of their eyes dimmed and were filled with despair. Finished. Nangong was finished. The Li family was finished. Also didn't know how many people present could escape from this. No one noticed that a hidden, severely cold expression flashed through the eyes that Grandmaster Rong Yun used to watch Li Yaoyao. Now, everyone was stunned by the news of Su Luo's death. Su Luo was originally Su Manor's most unremarkable daughter of a concubine. Rumored that she was born as a good-for-nothing with no ability to cultivate, she was a love-struck idiot, always the laughingstock of the entire capital. But in a short amount of time, she suddenly sprang up. She won the fight against the little genius, Su Qing, became intimate close with His Highness Prince Jean, almost succeeded in fighting to a tie with the Jade Lakes Fairy. How dazzling was this light? Only a bit more, just short by a little bit, and she would grow to become a dazzling star among geniuses, with all attention focused on her. But in the end, just when she touched the periphery, wordlessly and without any news, she fell from the sky. Some people let out a breath of relief and rejoiced endlessly. Some people's brows were tightly knotted and felt it was regretful. Li Yaoyao eyes swept by. Seeing that most people present after hearing the news of Su Luo's death were rejoicing at her misfortune, a cold sneer streaked across her eyes. Great master, these are the fire source stones that I brought out. Li Yaoyao cleverly stepped forth, offering her spoils of war. Wait until the time is up before discussing it. Grandmaster Rong Yun indifferently stood up and departed in an icily arrogant manner. Li Yaoyao clasped the 3 fire source stones in her hands and couldn't help but to stare blankly. Why did she faintly feel that Grandmaster Rong Yun seemed to have an objection to her? Could it be that inside Grandmaster's heart, he actually cared about Su Luo, that loathsome girl? Li Yaoyao's eyes narrowed slightly and bit her lower lip. She secretly snorted coldly in her heart. Fortunately, she had already killed Su Luo in the beginning. Otherwise, she really would disturb her formal apprenticeship to Grandmaster Rong Yun. It doesn't matter. Wait until she formally becomes his disciple. Grandmaster Rong Yun would discover that she, Li Yaoyao's, potential was much more than Su Luo's. There was no problem with his vision. Returned to the Li Manor's courtyard. Li Yaoxiang saw Li Yaoyao daydreaming. He frowned and asked her a sentence. Yaoyao, you are certain that loathsome girl is already dead? Absolutely sure. Li Yaoyao unswervingly said. I personally saw her die in front of me. How could it be fake? Could it be that second uncle does not believe my eyes? Li Yaoxiang's heart still felt uneasy. He frowned and asked, could something unexpected happen? For example, you smashed her until she was directly promoted? This kind of thing is possible at that time. Your brother was also. That was why the more Li Yaoxiang thought, the more uneasy he became. To say nothing of Su Luo, that loathsome girl whose luck defied the natural order of things. Second uncle, are you joking? Li Yaoyao stared at Li Yaoxiang outrageously. Do you feel that that 1 in 10,000 chance would happen on that loathsome girl's body? Besides, I personally saw the flames engulfing her. Even if it was a 10th-ranked expert, there would also be no possibility of survival. To say nothing of her, with such a weak ability. Then, since this is the case, why are your brows wrinkled? Li Yaoxiang looked at Li Yaoyao and asked, Second uncle, do you feel that Grandmaster Rong Yun had already guessed our actions? Li Yaoyao's heart was slightly anxious. Her gaze had a trace of fear in them. So what if he guessed it? Grandmaster Rong Yun originally did not like her. To eliminate her from his point of view and yours is a good thing. Chapter 755, News of Su Luo's Death, 3. Li Yaoxiang smilingly patted Li Yaoyao's shoulder. Really? Li Yaoyao always felt that her heart was somewhat apprehensive. How could this be fake? You think about it, to take you and Su Luo, that loathsome girl, out, no matter who, they would choose you. Only, never expected that the first 2 rounds, that loathsome girl's luck was so good, that the whole way she was tied with you. Maybe the Grandmaster's heart was also very jittery. Li Yaoxiang smiled, looking extremely pleased. Li Yaoxiang somewhat upsetly looked at Li Yaoyao. Since returning and up to now, he continued maintain his silence. He hadn't said a single word. before having been pushed away by Bai Chen-ing with one move. That kind of humiliation succeeded in trampling and crushing his pride. Li Yaoyao took notice of the difference in his appearance, smoothed out her lips into a smile, and said, "Big brother, I already helped you to take revenge. Why is it that you are still not happy?" "Big brother naturally is happy." Li Yaoqiong smiled a little. "Big brother, wait until I pay my respects and enter Grandmaster Rong Yun's door. Then, I'll ask Master to help refine medicine. In all likelihood, you will once again return to the summit." Seeing through to Li Yaoqiong's sadness and depression, Li Yaoyao directly pointed out the key point. "Yaoyao, are you telling the truth?" Li Yaoqiong's originally dim gaze suddenly shone brightly. His body's cultivation was originally ruined by Grandmaster Rong Yun. Would he be this kind? Rest assured, after 5 days, I will become the great master's last disciple. What matter could be impossible? Li Yaoyao was full of confidence. Then, Big brother will depend on you for all of this. Hearing that he could return to the summit again, Li Yaoqiong's original dark and gloomy complexion immediately was glowing in spirit. In order to return the favor, Li Yaoqiong had an idea. Even though Su Luo is dead, but we haven't seen it with our own eyes. This point is rather regretful. Li Yaoyao's mind suddenly moved. Does Big brother have a good idea? The corner of Li Yaoqiong's mouth hooked up slightly, perking up into a profoundly mysterious and weird smile. Do you guys still remember Su Zian? This item foreshadowing things to come is buried for long enough. It's time to stir it. As for Su Zian, a cold smile flashed through Li Yaoyao's beautiful eyes. Su Luo, offending me, Li Yaoyao. I want you to, even in death, not have peace. Even dead, I want you to completely fall from grace. Su Manor. Night, so quiet as to be frightening. Inside the study, Su Zian's complexion became more and more horrible. Ever since receiving the news of Su Luo's death, afterwards, his face stayed gloomy. So gloomy that black water nearly dripped out. Originally, seeing Su Luo's incomparable potential, he still thought to let the mistake be and take this loathsome girl to be his biological daughter, to act on behalf of Su Manor, propping it up to glory. But can't take out in public was just can't take out in public. In the final round, she would just die like that. It didn't matter that she had died. But it made all of Su Zian's hopes and expectations come up empty. This coming up empty, Su Zian couldn't help but to recall the mournful scene in Su Manor nowadays. Madame Su was harmed until she lay paralyzed on the bed, mouth couldn't speak, body couldn't move, simply resembling a stick of wood. Su Jingyu, his only son, was practically the same as Madame. There was also his Wanner, whose corpse was torn apart by wild beasts. Having her limbs cut off, and after was unaccounted for was Qinger, alone. She ran out and even now hadn't returned. Originally, when he saw Su Luo, Su Zian could still console himself. This had nothing to do with Su Luo. However now, with Su Luo dead, the rage in his heart ignited, and he directly placed all of these charges onto Su Luo's body. In the darkness, a person dressed in black quietly arrived. The dagger once again delivered the letter soundlessly in front of Su Zian, onto his long table. Su Zian's heart jumped violently. When he opened the letter and after inspecting its content, a sinister ray of light flashed through that pair of hawk-like eyes. Chapter 756, News of Su Luo's Death. 4. Su Luo. Since you are not my, Su Zian's, biological daughter, then you shouldn't enjoy the glory of Su Manor again. The morning of the second day, Su Zian went to morning court. This early in the morning, Emperor Jing's mood was rather complicated, because Nangong Luyun repeatedly warned. Therefore, compared to other people, he knew how important a place this loathsome girl occupied in his heart. This was also the cause of him continuously delaying the betrothal gift originally prepared for the Jade Lakesley family. But now, since that provoking and disagreeable loathsome girl was dead, just died quietly like that, Emperor Jing didn't know how to face Nangong Luyun. As a result, when he saw Su Zian, Emperor Jing still wanted to say a few words to comfort him, reward him with a bigger government official position to sit in. However, he had just opened his mouth. Official Su, since Su Luo is already dead, you should. Just at this moment, Su Zian stepped forward to submit a report to the emperor. Reporting to your majesty, this humble official has an important writing to present to the emperor. Oh. Emperor Jing listlessly waved his hand. Bring the writing over. As a result, Su Zian took the roll of paper he had written throughout the night and handed it to the court eunuch to be placed in front of Emperor Jing. Emperor Jing carelessly picked it up and swept through it, but in a split second, he frowned. A severe expression flashed through his eyes. What? Su Luo actually is not your Su Zian's biological daughter? Once these words were out, immediately, the entire throne room was in an uproar. Recently, Su Luo's name was very hot and famous in the imperial capital. Everyone's praise or censor varied, but everyone knew Su Luo was Su Manor's daughter by a concubine. But now, after the news of Su Luo's death had spread, Su Zian unexpectedly gave this book-sized written report, saying that Su Luo was not his, Su Zian's biological daughter. For a moment, nearly all of the civil and military ministers' gazes rested on Su Zian's body. Under the stares of countless searching gazes, Su Zian took a step forward. He lowered his head and dropped his gaze, but his voice was sharp, loud and clear. Reporting back to your majesty, Su Luo really isn't my, Su Zian's, biological daughter. This was all because of an accident at that time that was unexpected. As a result, Su Zian told the story of the wet nurse at his concubine's side and how she stole and exchanged the infant. Finally, with head high and chest out, in an imposing manner, he majestically said, back then, after that wet nurse left, she married the old steward Wang Qi from Lu Manor. Therefore, this matter, the third miss of Lu Manor, Lu Ruahua, also can bear witness to. Guard come. Announce for Lu Ruahua. Emperor Jing frowned and raised his voice to say, if Su Luo was not Su Zian's daughter, then who was she? At that time, in the end, who stole and exchanged the infant? Very quickly, Lu Ruahua arrived. Under the countless pair of eyes that were watching, in the beginning, she was a little apprehensive. But whenever she recalled Su Luo, her heart would be filled with hatred, as she angrily said, this official's daughter can bear witness that the wet nurse back then did speak about this matter. Then, do you know, where is that wet nurse and old Wang Qi now? Lu Ruahua's eyes hung down slightly, her heart was somewhat nervous, and silently could not say it out loud. Emperor Jing, having heard what was said, couldn't help but frown slightly. If there was proof that Su Luo came from unknown origins, after Lu Yun came out, he had some words to say, otherwise, how could he face second child? As a result, he slapped the armrest of the dragon chair and coldly said, you need only worry about saying it, all other things, there is I, the emperor, to take charge of. Only now did Lu Ruahua lift her head, her gaze firmly looking at Emperor Jing. At that time, in a small town outside of Sunset Mountain Range, this official's daughter revealed this matter to His Highness Prince Jin. Afterwards, old Wang Qi and wet nurse disappeared. Once Lu Ruahua said these words, everyone was stunned stupid. The meaning in her words were very clear. His Highness Prince Jing took away old Wang Qi and the wet nurse, whose maiden name was Yang. It turned out His Highness Prince Jin had known since the beginning that Su Luo was not Su Zian's biological daughter. Chapter 757, News of Su Luo's Death. 5. Since the beginning, he knew Su Luo was from unknown origin, and he still continued to have a close relationship with Su Luo that nothing could come in between. It clearly can be seen that whether Su Luo was the daughter of the great general that protected the nation or not, with regards to him, he totally did not care. An uneasiness appeared in Emperor Jing's heart. If Lu Yun really cared so much about Su Luo, then if he knew about the news of Su Luo's death. At that time, the unrest in Emperor Jing's heart became a more intense feeling. But a dead person could not come back to life. Then, what could he do? To say nothing of the fact that it was best that Su Luo, that girl, had died. Only with her death would Lu Yun form a union with the Jade Lake's fairy. Thinking this way, the tangle in Emperor Jing's heart gradually released. After Su Zian returned to the manor, The first matter was to invite many people to bear witness. He took out the family's genealogy record, and he crossed out Su Luo's name from the record on the spot. That one brush, with a thick black ink, thoroughly erased the relationship between Su Luo and Su Manor. Su Zian loudly announced to the crowd of people watching, "From today onwards, Su Luo, this name, has no relation to Su Manor. The things she did before also has nothing to do with Su Manor. I ask everyone here to spread it widely." From Su Zian's point of view, doing this was very wise. After all, before, Su Luo had offended many. Just the Jade Lakesley family alone was like a huge mountain pressing down on top of his head, simply not allowing him to breathe. Once the news of Su Luo's death spread out, these few days, the situation was full of the fiercest winds and waves. Therefore, once Su Zian said these words, it immediately was spread throughout the entire capital, even in the great streets and small alleys. However, what was outside of Su Zian and Li Yaoyao's expectations was that this time's matter unexpectedly gave rise to the populace's sympathy towards Su Luo. The people always sympathize with the weak. Before, Su Luo's rise was too fast, and was then chosen by His Highness Prince Jin. Therefore, many people had a jealous heart and would say some slanted words. But now, since the person was already dead, and Su Zian would make such a move after the fact, immediately, many people looked down upon him. Even more, didn't know where this rumor was spread from. It said that Su Zian had already known earlier that Su Luo was not his biological daughter. But, seeing Su Luo's bright prospects, so he had continuously concealed it. But Su Luo had died, so there was no longer any worth for him to exploit. Consequently, he had revealed this inside story to the public. Once these words were out, it immediately pushed Su Luo up to the peak of the fiercest winds and waves of rumors in the capital. It made him shoulder much of the infamy. Su Manor. Su Zian was so furious that with one slap of the table, all the stuff on it fell. He still did not understand the hate. His palm slapped down and that long strip of table answered with a breaking sound. Originally, he wanted everyone to criticize Su Luo, that loathsome girl, but he never expected that the one being denounced was replaced with himself. The Li family in the imperial capital. Li Yaoyao heard the wave after wave of rumors from outside, and her brows started to knot tightly. Besides the matter of Su Zian, there were other rumors that were circulating. It was that Li Yaoyao killed Su Luo. It was the same as Su Zian. She also never expected that it would produce such a huge deviation from what she expected. On Yiming, it must be him. Recalling that lukewarm and wise eyes, the fists at Li Yaoyao's side clenched tightly. That day, he had forced her to make that poisonous oath, and now, he was secretly turning the tide of people's feelings. On Yiming, what's so great about Su Luo? That deserve you guys going this far for her? Li Yaoyao, originally, thought to strike back, but the agreed-upon time had already arrived. This day was the day that Grandmaster will announce the disciple he would accept. In the throne room, no one was absent. The past several days, Su Luo still had not come out. So, everyone believed the words of the Jade Lake's fairy. They all thought that Su Luo had really died. Originally, there were only 2 people vying for this. Now, since Su Luo was already dead, then the only remaining candidate was the Jade Lake's fairy. Chapter 758, News of Su Luo's Death, 6. At this time, the countless pairs of eyes carried a touch of envy as they looked at the Jade Lake's fairy. Today's Jade Lake's fairy had on a pink dress with butterflies playing on daffodils. The skirt of the muslin was embroidered with gold thread, so long that it trailed on the ground. A soft embroidered muslin silk fabric was looped around her slender arms. Her entire person looked spry and lively like an immortal. She was like a fairy that was above the common populace. Seated up on high was Grandmaster Rong Yun. His gaze was absolutely stunning and deep. He looked graceful yet apathetic. His gaze swept by lightly, and everyone below the steps, without exception, bowed their heads to avoid his line of sight. This sort of subtle domineering aura lacking fury, it was a powerful deterrence force. It always made people not dare to approach due to fear in their hearts. Great Master, these are the fire source stones that I got from the demon cave. Please inspect them. Holding up the fire source stones with both hands, Li Yaoyao cleverly stepped forward. She lifted up high her fine as jade hands and handed them over. Apothecary Long's eyes narrowed slightly, and a trace of fury flashed across his eyes. However, Li Yaoyao still stood in front of him with no fear, lifting up high the fire source stones in both of her hands. Humph! Apothecary Long seized the fire source stones with one move and delivered them to Grandmaster Rong Yun. Grandmaster Rong Yun gently stroked these 3 pieces of fire source stones. His ink-black eyes were profoundly mysterious, and his expression was as tranquil as the deep blue sea. No one could guess this exceptionally strong expert's way of thinking in his heart. These 3 pieces are truly ones this apothecary had buried. Grandmaster Rong Yun nodded his head. His voice was tranquil and calm. Below the steps, Li Yaoxiang and Li Aoqiong exchanged a mutual glance as a trace of joy flashed through their eyes. Grandmaster Rong Yun looked at the color of the sky to determine the time, then took another look at Li Yaoyao and finally he nodded. Since only you alone came out, then, this apothecary will announce, wait. Suddenly, a voice that resonated through heaven and earth and seeming to come from afar arrived nearby. The owner of this voice's skills was practically as deep and unfathomable as Grandmaster Rong Yun's. Although it came from an extremely far distance, but his voice sounded as if it was echoing from beside every single person's ear. Even if one wanted to avoid it, they could not. However, speaking of the demon cave, outside, the heavens were already flipped over because of Su Luo's death, but inside the demon cave, Su Luo passed the time as peacefully as running water. Due to the spirit pinball's explosion, Su Luo had received an intense attack from waves of energy, therefore, she suffered some internal injuries. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, that strange spirit stone protected her body. Otherwise, the current Su Luo would have already been transformed into a cloud of light smoke and floated away. However, due to the impact of the attack, stones had fallen down all around and piled up into a mass of rubble. Su Luo went through great difficulty to climb out from within the rubble. Su Luo had originally intended to find a way out. However, she followed pathway after pathway and couldn't help but become dumbstruck. She actually got lost. This huge labyrinth, this time's turn, she had 6 smaller paths to choose from. Su Luo felt her head was getting bigger. Wake up! Su Luo pulled out the little divine dragon that had been sleeping inside her space and poked his forehead. Do you still remember the way out? The little divine dragon scratched his head, looked at Su Luo innocently, then looked again at the countless small forks in the road up ahead. Afterwards his eyes assumed the shape of a hypnotic spiral. Quite clearly, the little divine dragon also did not know how to get out. Just at this moment, suddenly, a thin voice came from up ahead. It sounded somewhat like Bai Qinying's voice. It's impossible, right? How could Bai Qinying possibly get in? Although Su Luo felt it was not believable, but that voice came closer and closer. At last, Bai Qinying's figure appeared at the other end of the passage. Sister-in-law. The voice that came from far away had seen Su Luo. Originally, he had exhausted his voice until it became a hiss, but now, it was suddenly full of strength. Emotionally moved, he let loose and took large strides to rush towards Su Luo. It really is Bai Qinying? Staring blankly, Su Luo stood in place. With a face full of shock, she looked at Bai Qinying who had appeared in front of her. When Bai Qinying saw Su Luo, he was so excited that he almost couldn't control himself. Chapter 759. News of Su Luo's death. 7. Didn't die. Ha ha ha. Su Luo didn't die. Bai Qinying felt that in this split second, he had also come back to life. He could not contain himself anymore and pulled Su Luo into a bear hug. His arms were holding on so tightly, he nearly squeezed out all the air from inside Su Luo's lungs. The strength of his arms was very powerful, and he had pulled Su Luo in so suddenly. As a result, the completely unguarded Su Luo had her entire face knocked against his chest. It hurts. Su Luo cried out painfully. He was certainly proving himself to be the close childhood friend who had gone through thick and thin and grown up together with Nangong. Even the strength used when hugging a person was just as heavy-handed. In the past life, this sort of brotherly embrace was really common. Therefore, Su Luo completely did not have thoughts in another direction. She just thought that Bai Qinying's action was from being emotionally moved. I'm about to be suffocated to death by you. Bai Qinying, hurry up and release me. Su Luo covered her nose and hurriedly pushed Bai Qinying away, then massaged her own nose. Only then did Bai Qinying realize how rashly he had acted. However, seeing that Su Luo did not take it to heart, he also let it pass by going through the motions. He looked at Su Luo from top to bottom. That gaze was like a probing wire. When Su Luo saw it, she became upset. Why are you looking at me like this? Su Luo's distinctly clear eyes looked at Bai Qinying. Was she mistaken? A trace of moisture actually flashed across this child's eyes. I just knew you'd be fine. I just knew it was a rumor that Li Yaoyao invented. Sister-in-law, it's simply great that you're fine. Bai Qinying bit his lower lip, his facial muscles trembling somewhat emotionally. But he perked up and smiled, revealing his cute canine teeth and also his cute little dimples. Li Yaoyao had gone out so quickly? What rumor did she start? Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly, a touch of conjecture flashing across her eyes. She said you are dead. Bai Qinying, extremely angry over the injustice, smashed a fist against the wall, then gave a cold snort. This woman is simply too vile. She deceived all of the nearly 1,000 people waiting outside. Even Grandmaster Rong Yun believed what she said. Therefore, you just ran in here? Su Luo unhappily glared at him, too impatient. If something really had happened to you, how would I explain it to Nangong? When he was leaving, he was serious about the matter as he handed you over into our care. Bai Qinying raised his neck, attempting to find justifications for why he lost control. Su Luo laughed a little, pulled him down to sit on the side. But speaking of this, it could be regarded that Li Yaoyao really didn't tell a lie. After all, she really did think I had died. The moment Bai Qinying heard this, he suddenly stood back up. Okay. Stop being so flustered. Am I not fine right now? Su Luo smilingly pulled him to sit down again. With regards to Bai Qinying, this adorable, sunny big boy, she always had this feeling of looking after a younger brother. In the end, just what happened, exactly? Bai Qinying's deeply concerned gaze stared unblinkingly at Su Luo, deeply afraid of missing a single trace of her mood on her face. Su Luo thought for a bit, then she spoke of the matter once through, from the start until the end. It's just that the matter concerning her space and celestial spirit water, she brushed by it without mentioning it. PFFTDD. When Su Luo got to the part where Li Yaoyao got pulled away by the demon boss to be stripped naked, Bai Qinying couldn't bear it anymore and immediately let out a PFFTTT laughing sound. He was so amused. He beat the ground with his fist as he laughed heartily. Too amusing. Simply too amusing. Oh, that's right. Did she actually get stripped naked? She just knew, regardless of whether it was a big boy or a big man, their interest would forever be on this point. Su Luo spread out her hands in annoyance. She still had a piece of undergarment covering the chest and abdomen left. It could also be regarded that Li Yaoyao had endured the humiliation as part of an important mission, then escaped at the crucial moment. What a pity. Bai Qinying shook his head, not without some regret. Then afterwards? How did she end up spreading the news of your death? Chapter 760 News of Su Luo's Death 8. Hearing this, the corner of Su Luo's mouth raised into a sneer. She used a 9th-ranked spirit pinball to hit me. Now tell me, how could she not think I was dead? Hearing what was said, Bai Qinying nearly jumped up in alarm. She actually used a 9th-ranked spirit pinball to hit you with? Then, are you okay? Bai Qinying inspected Su Luo once over from top to bottom. He discovered that other than her qi and blood boiling and a few internal injuries, unexpectedly, she was in surprisingly good condition. That was a rank 9 spirit pinball in the end. How did you avoid it? Bai Qinying covered his chest from the still lingering fears. Previously, She had used a 9th rank spirit pinball to smash Li Yaoqiong into the 9th rank. This was already beyond people's expectations. Now, she had been hit by a spirit pinball, and yet nothing happened to her? However, a spirit pinball? With regards to others, it was a killing weapon. When it comes to Su Luo, it's completely useless. But you did not get promoted. Bei Qining discovered that Su Luo's body was full of mysteries. I dodged it. Su Luo smilingly spread out her hands. But Li Yaoyao's animosity, haha, I have already written it into her account. She believed that very quickly, she would have the ability to personally eliminate Li Yaoyao with her own hands. Then, should we go out? Bei Qining saw that Su Luo was safe and sound, so he really had no other requests. No, it's still not the right time. Right now, I don't have enough fire source stones in my hands. That's right. Since Li Yaoyao had already went out, did you see how many fire source stones she found? Su Luo gazed at Bei Qining with eyes full of expectations. Bei Qining cutely scratched his head. His pair of eyes were at a loss. I was in a rush to come in to find you, that's why. Su Luo shrugged her shoulders. Before, she had 3 pieces in her hands. What happened afterwards, I'm not too clear about it. However, I only have 2 pieces in my hands. No matter what, I need to at least have more than 3 pieces. Since there was still time, Su Luo and Bei Qining followed the passages in the maze and started to go deeper inside to find them. The passage was not wide, but it was also not narrow, more than enough for 2 people to walk past, shoulder to shoulder. In front, there were another 6 paths that were exactly the same. Which one should we walk? Su Luo raised her eyes to ask. Your luck has always been good, so you should choose. Bei Qining smilingly exposed 2 canine teeth. The corner of his mouth showed 2 deep dimples. Truly an obedient good child. Then, start walking to the first passage on the right. Su Luo took the initiative to turn towards it. What obedient good child. I am older than you by. Bei Qining was unsatisfied and caught up with quick steps. His voice had not yet come out, before his mouth suddenly gave voice to a surprise sound. What's wrong? Su Luo, who was walking in front, saw that Bei Qining had stopped. She couldn't help but to turn her head to look. Su Luo looked down and discovered that Bei Qining had stepped on a protruding rock, and this rock gave off a dazzlingly hot radiance. Su Luo hadn't finished speaking when an unforeseen event occurred. There was no warning sign whatsoever. It was like hailstones raining down. Boom, 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 a countless number of rocks dropped from the sky. Their speed was fast as lightning. Just when Su Luo and Bei Qining didn't have enough time to react, around them, on all 4 sides, a stone room had formed. The length, width, and height of the stone room was all 3 meters. Su Luo and Bei Qining looked at each other in dismay. Both of them were somewhat speechless. How could such a room appear so suddenly? Su Luo subconsciously went to push on the walls, but the stone room did not budge. Didn't know what materials it was made of. It was incomparably tough and durable. Su Luo tried using her palm force to strike it. The result when the palm force struck forth was that immediately it was as if the palm force hit cotton. There wasn't any reaction. Bei Qining also tried to use his 7th rank palm force to attack, but the result was the same as Su Luo's. What a do? That's right. She still had the dagger. Chapter 761, News of Su Luo's Death, 9. The dagger Yinhua that could cut things like wind slicing hair. A light flashed through Su Luo's eyes. She took out the dagger and thrusted it in, her heart full of confidence. Suddenly, Su Luo's expression collapsed in defeat. The dagger, which was originally incomparably sharp, was actually useless towards this unknown wall. Could it be that there really is no way out? Su Luo muttered to herself, I don't believe it. With regards to sharpness, could there be anything sharper than the little divine dragon's claws and teeth? As a result, Su Luo pulled out the little divine dragon who was sleeping soundly from her space. The little divine dragon rubbed his drowsy, sleepy eyes. Both of his eyes innocently and bewilderedly looked at Su Luo. He had slyly eaten a few of the demon soldiers again. He was truly sleepy. Su Luo carried the little divine dragon and pointed at the side of the wall. You are my last hope. You must not disappoint your family's master. If she was to be trapped in this small room for the rest of her life, Su Luo felt that she would absolutely go mad. The little divine dragon could feel his owner's concern. He clenched his small fists and seriously nodded. As a result, the little divine dragon directly clawed at the wall. A very shallow claw print streaked across the wall. Just when Su Luo's eyes revealed a pleasantly surprised radiance, that shallow claw mark actually disappeared in the blink of an eye, not leaving a trace. The snow-white wall returned to its originally pristine form. Su Luo and Beichen-ing looked at each other in dismay. They truly did not know what to say that would be best. The little divine dragon also felt that this was somewhat unexpected. He extended both of his little claws and carefully looked at them. Finally, his mouth pouted and he laid on the wall and started to nibble at the wall. However, crunch, so hard and unable to bite it. The little divine dragon pouted his mouth, feeling wronged. That pair of clear eyes, at this moment, contained 2 streams of tears. He gazed at Su Luo miserably. That appearance simply made people's heart ache. Afterwards, he wanted to speak to Su Luo, so he opened his mouth. Then, he paused, a small tooth falling out from his mouth. Seeing this, the corner of Su Luo's mouth pursed slightly, and she had a feeling of carrying the blame. In the end, how hard was the surface of this wall? It actually broke off the little divine dragon's baby tooth. Su Luo heart-achingly inspected his tooth. What to do? This one that fell out, will it grow back again? It was Su Luo's first time raising a dragon, and she completely did not know the growth pattern of the dragon race. Weef, yes. The little divine dragon covered the place the incisor had fallen out and nodded his head deadly earnestly. His inherited memory told him this was the process of replacing his teeth. It was one of the indications that he was growing. Seeing this scene now, Beichen-ying's expression flashed with self-blame. Sorry, I dragged you in. Beichen-ying's face was full of guilt. We are comrade-in-arms that fight side by side. Don't say things like this. Seems as if we are strangers. Su Luo smilingly patted his shoulders. This is nothing serious. Pull yourself together, youngster. Seeing that Su Luo was still this optimistic, Beichen-ing smiled a little. Then, what should we do now? Su Luo expressed that she did not know. All the methods at her disposal were all already used, but they were completely useless. Time passed little by little. Su Luo and Beichen-ing each leaned on one side of the walls. Their faces both had a helpless expression. Su Luo, bored, played with the weird spirit stone. Right now, its temperature had already dropped and wasn't as scalding to the hand as before. If you don't leave within the set time limit, then you would automatically lose all of your qualifications in this competition. Beichen-ing, somewhat jittery, grabbed his hair. If you do not go out, then Li Yaoyao will become the only candidate. At that time, she can automatically become the Grandmaster's last disciple. Her background is already solid and strong. If she was also to become the Grandmaster's disciple, then at that time, how could you compete with her? The more Beichen-ing spoke, the more guilty he felt, until finally, he smashed the wall with his fist in regret. Chapter 762, News of Su Luo's Death, 10. Su Luo leaned against the wall, and seeing him like this, she hurriedly caught his hand. Before, I had no background nor a master to take charge of me, but didn't I still walk the whole journey to arrive here anyway? There's no meaning in saying these things now. What's most important is how to get out of here. Su Luo, time after time, tossed up that strange spirit stone to amuse herself. Although her expression seemed relaxed, inside her heart, she was actually somewhat worried. Idiot! Suddenly, a sound rang out from beside Su Luo's ear. Su Luo was suddenly startled and immediately sat up straight. Then, she examined up, down, left, right, and all around. However, in this small stone room, apart from her and Beichen-ing, there weren't any other people. What happened? Seeing Su Luo suddenly sit up straight, Beichen-ing asked in concern. Don't tell me you didn't hear it? Su Luo's face was full of astonishment. Why didn't Beichen-ing have any reaction? Hear what? Beichen-ing looked at Su Luo strangely. Idiot. There is someone cursing us as idiot. Su Luo's entire face was earnest as she spoke seriously about this matter. How is that possible? I completely didn't hear it. Bei Qining said truthfully. That's not right. Clearly there is someone. Su Luo frowned, remaining puzzled despite much thought. Extremely stupid. Yet another sound emerged at the side of Su Luo's ear. Su Luo suddenly looked at Bei Qining. It said something again. Did you hear it? Bei Qining was made somewhat nervous because of Su Luo's unhinged actions and appearance. I really didn't hear it. As a result, the two of them opened their eyes wide and examined everywhere within this 9 square meters area. But this place was truly bare. There was nothing here. Finally, after searching the place once through with no results, their gazes identically looked towards the strange stone that Su Luo had placed on the ground. Extremely stupid. Hurry up and pick up this little grandpa. A proud and pampered voice emerged at the side of Su Luo's ear. Su Luo was immediately struck dumb. She lifted her eyes to look at Bei Qining but saw that Bei Qining's eyes seemed at a loss, as if he had not heard it at all. Su Luo paused for a moment, then stooped down to pick up that strange piece of fiery red spirit stone. Speaking of this piece of spirit stone, it had already saved her life quite a few times. Is it you? Su Luo sent out a spirit thought in her mind, attempting to communicate with this piece of stone. Just now, hearing its voice, it sounded like a proud and pampered 5 or 6-year-old brat. Humph! From inside the fiery red spirit stone came the sound of an arrogantly cold humph. Su Luo could totally create a mental image of a deadpanning brat with both arms folded across his chest. He had his jaw raised as he shot a sidelong glance at her. Su Luo had a kind of premonition. Whether or not she could make it out of this stone room would depend on this little piece of thing inside her hand. As a result, the corner of her mouth hooked into a slight smile and she poked that stone. You've been trapped inside this stone, right? Do you want to come out? The voice of the brat inside carried a trace of resentment. With your current slight cultivation, after how many years and how many months can I then be let out? I can find other people. Oh. The corner of Su Luo's mouth parted slightly. This little thing's temper was rather large. Find other people. You've already dripped blood and is recognized as the master. How can I still find other people? The brat got angrier the more he spoke, wishing he could rush out and clutch Su Luo by the neck. Didn't I just happen to pick you up? Su Luo was depressed. The brats nowadays were getting harder and harder to coax. What? Who told you to pick me up? Who told you that you can pick me up? The voice of one who had been driven mad exploded from inside. There were 3 black lines hanging on Su Luo's forehead. She attempted to explain. At that time, in the Amethyst Fish Palace, I don't know how you rolled out and were stepped on by me. At the mention of this, the brat inside was even more furious. Who told you to step on me? At that time, there was clearly a formidable existence. That's why I rolled out. Why is it that I got stepped on by you? Su Luo was immediately speechless, but she understood some things now. So, originally, that place should have been Nangong Liuyun's. This pathetic baby's luck was really too terrible. With one roll, it rolled underneath her own foot. Chapter 763, Cultivation Breakthrough 1. Su Luo weakly asked, then what to do? It's not like she did it on purpose. Who told it to voluntarily roll underneath her foot? At that time, when she picked it up, it also hadn't rejected her. The brat's anger wasn't spent yet. You have already dropped blood and I had to recognize ownership. What else could be done? Can't you just cultivate properly and break through to the 10th rank earlier? Su Luo lightly coughed twice. Stay calm, stay calm. However, if this brat had followed Nangong, considering Nangong's good prospects and strength, he would indeed break through to the 10th rank very quickly. But following her, it would have to follow her and fleeing to the other end of the world. Stay calm, what fart? If it isn't because changing masters once will tear away 100 years of my cultivation. Little grandpa, humph. The brat, puffed up, snorted twice and resentfully turned his body away. Su Luo could see that tiny black shadow inside the fiery red stone, making threatening gestures, and could not help but burst into laughter. Su Luo spread out her hands, regardless of how it was before. Right now, all you can do is follow me to muddle along. Okay, let's not speak more nonsense words. Hurry up and tell your master, me, how to get out of here. This little room was very square. There were no doors, no windows, and the wall was incomparably tough and durable. There was absolutely no way out. Extremely stupid. The brat rolled his eyes disdainfully. Use nothingness of space to wrap around your hand. Try it and then you'll know. This rotten little child's temper was still extremely bad. However, Su Luo also understood his kind of gloomy mood. She followed the little rotten child's directions and formed a tiny nothingness of space. The nothingness of space before her took the form of a halo. Other people could not see it. Only Su Luo herself could see it. Su Luo wrapped the tiny nothingness of space firmly around her arm. Then, she touched the wall. Something fantastic happened. Su Luo discovered that the arm could actually penetrate the invulnerable, indestructible, and impregnable wall and directly extend to the outside. Bei Qining, who was on the side, simply watched until he was stupefied. Just now, they had tried various methods and it was all useless. Now, unexpectedly, her entire arm passed through. He blinked and then blinked again. It's magical, right? Su Luo happily laughed as she pulled her arm back in. She patted Bei Qinying's shoulder. Relax, your older sister will bring you out. Bei Qining lifted Su Luo's hand and tossed it away. Proudly and lovably, he shot her a sidelong glance. Whose older sister are you? A little girl also wants to act as a big sister? In any case, I will be treating you as a younger brother, Su Luo said with a smile. Bei Qining's smile paused, but immediately, he revealed a brilliant smile as dazzling as sunshine. Little girls always saying such nonsense. Here, first, eat something to fill our stomachs. Su Luo took out several steamed buns and a jug full of water from her space and handed them over to him. Ever since the last time she got trapped and had to endure starvation, Su Luo stuffed a lot of food into her space. It was full to the brim. She was afraid of starving again. Bei Qining stared at Su Luo in shock. His eyes opened wide until they were perfectly round. Just now, Su Luo being able to use her hand to pass through the wall was already an intensely shocking sight to him. Now, she could just conveniently make food appear as if by magic. I forgot to tell you, I am a space mage. Su Luo complacently cast him a glance. You, this girl, these nice surprises are truly coming out numerously in succession. What sort of luck is this? Bei Qining was shock-numb by Su Luo's natural gifts. First, she was a wood-fire dual-element apothecary. Then, she was a space mage that was rare throughout the world. How was it that she had run into all the good things? Could it be that it was just like Lan Xian had said, that she really was the illegitimate daughter of the goddess of fortune? After eating and drinking their fill, the two of them each sat on one side and started to cultivate. Bei Qining was of the wind and fire elements. Su Luo lent that piece of spirit stone for him to use. This piece of spirit stone had absorbed more than half of the fire elements inside the Cave of Flames. With regards to cultivating the fire element, this provided the greatest amount of help. Chapter 764, Cultivation Breakthrough 2. Bei Qining looked at this piece of spirit stone. Silently, he turned his face away. Weren't the heavens too favoring of one and discriminating of others too much? Being borrowed by Bei Qining to use, the little rotten child inside the spirit stone only snorted twice. It didn't produce another sound again. As a result, he came out to say that the bit of flames that Bei Qining absorbed was like a drop in the ocean. In order to get out earlier, to make the timeline before the 10 days, Su Luo cultivated with unprecedented seriousness. Only the fusion of the space rules and the great dimensional imprint could produce nothingness of space. Su Luo sat cross-legged, both hands folded in front of her stomach, forming one complicated hand seal after another. Ever since the tiny nothingness of space had appeared, afterwards, She faintly felt that there were a countless number of threads crisscrossing between her space and the great dimensional imprint. These threads were thin, and there were also lots of them. It seemed to be not there, and there also didn't seem to be any rules. As a result, Su Luo had always ignored them. Now, she calmed her heart to slowly cultivate. She then discovered that these threads, every one of them seemed to be stirring. Extremely stupid. Make these threads form one from two. As long as you fuse them, then it will succeed. You had already cultivated it. Now you just lacking the final step to enter. And you actually still hesitated over there. An arrogant voice rang out in Su Luo's head. Daring to talk like this to Su Luo, besides that little rotten child who had bad luck, who else could it be? However, to fuse these threads from two to one, how could it be done? Both of Su Luo's eyes seemed to be at a loss. Compress them, ah. You try to compress two threads into one. The little rotten child saw that Su Luo was slow to move, and he paced back and forth irascibly in the spirit stone. Okay, I'll try. Su Luo's eyes were tightly closed as she allowed her mind to become as tranquil as the ocean. In that vast region of her mind, every thread crisscrossed, and each were flickering with light. Su Luo chose two threads at the fringe of this area. Then she released the powers of her space. She condensed all the spirit powers in her body and intentionally commanded them to fuse them together. Close, close, again closer. Su Luo personally saw that under her own mind's urging, those two silver threads that were closest to each other unexpectedly really fused together slowly. Afterwards, they slowly completed the joining of two into one. During this process, it was quite costly for her mind. Just these two short threads cost Su Luo 2 hours of time. However, after fusing these two threads, Su Luo could really clearly sense that the tiny nothingness of space had grown a bit bigger. Su Luo counted some. In her head, there were actually 1,024 strings of silver threads. That's right, you need to fuse these 1,024 strings of threads into 512 strings. Only then will the nothingness of space be big enough to send you guys out. The rotten little child indifferently tossed out this sentence. Su Luo counted the time using her fingers. According to the time she used just now for fusion to calculate, at 2 hours to complete one fusion, then, in one day, at most, she could complete 12 fusions. There was only 5 days left to Grandmaster accepting a disciple. Within these 5 days, she couldn't even complete 100 fusions. Extremely stupid. Isn't the time in your space at a ratio of 1 to 100 compared to real time? The little rotten child bellowed to remind Su Luo. Su Luo somewhat speechlessly scratched her hair. She really did forget it. What do you have to be so fierce about? If you are fierce again, then I won't set you free later. Su Luo humphed twice. Wait for you to release me, this little grandpa? I'm better off looking forward to recovering from my own injuries and letting myself out. The little rotten child disdainfully curled his lips. You would look down so much on me? Am I really that lacking? Su Luo gave a heavy snort. If she was really to argue, she was also very gifted. Oh. The little rotten child sent a gloomy glance at Su Luo. Disagreeably turning his face away, he muttered to himself, still much weaker when compared to that person before. Chapter 765, Cultivation Breakthrough 3. Su Luo covered her face. Why was it that this little rotten child would always use that matter to attack her? It was not like she did it on purpose. Picking it up was her mistake? Clearly, it was he who had rolled to the wrong place. However, Su Luo knew that though this little rotten child might have an irascible temper, frequently arrogant and pampered, but there was a lot of stuff he understood. Moreover, looking at his strength, it was quite good. Considering these stuff, Su Luo decided to be generous and endure it. Because her space and reality had a 100-to-1 relationship, the original 5 days could be extended to 500 days. Therefore, Su Luo still had 500 days of time to try really hard. Wasn't Li Yaoyao certain that she was dead? Humph, humph. She would stubbornly walk out at the most critical moment to stand in front of everyone. She wanted to see, at that time, what kind of expression Li Yaoyao would have. Su Luo made a fist. She firmly decided that she would get out within 5 days. Su Lu suppressed her strong desire to get out and threw 100% of her energy into cultivating. Fortunately, she had stored food in her space and the high-grade celestial spirit water that was much sought after, but could only be found serendipitously. Besides eating and drinking water the rest of the time, Su Luo focused everything to immerse herself in cultivation. She did not slack off even a bit. One string at a time, she fused the threads. This was a very boring, dry, and tedious matter. But Su Luo was completely calm and single-heartedly devoted to fusing, cultivating. She didn't even have the time to sleep. The same as Su Luo, these few days, Bei Qinying's strength also had a remarkable improvement. One was always having an endless stream of fire element being supplied by the spirit stone. Two was the celestial spirit water Su Luo gave him that was high grade. Even like Bei Qinying, the direct descendant of an influential family, it was also given to him in drops. With Su Luo, this kind of extravagant use of it as drinking water, even if it was Bei Qinying family's elder, he still couldn't imagine it. As a result, when Bei Qinying first saw Su Luo hand him a full bottle of celestial spirit water for him to drink, he looked like a child who had never seen the world. He was struck dumb. Su Luo and Bei Qinying had a congenial relationship. She considered him a good friend and brother. Naturally, she wouldn't hide it from him anymore, so she smilingly soothed him. However much high-grade celestial spirit water you want to drink, I have it here. Therefore, don't worry about it. At that time, Bei Qinying's sharp eyebrows tightly knotted and gravely warned her. How many people don't covet this kind of treasure under the heavens? You must never tell other people so casually like this. Su Luo smilingly looked at him. Are you considered other people? Bei Qinying stared blankly. Afterwards, Su Luo laughed, patting him on the shoulder. You are Nangong's childhood friend. I trust you. Bei Qinying forced a smile as he shook his head. Her trust in him was still because of Nangong. However, as long as she trusted him, then he would exhaust all his powers to protect her thoroughly. This scene changed to outside of the demon cave, the Imperial Palace in Eastern Ling Empire. Today was exactly the day that Grandmaster Rong Yun would accept a disciple. Under thousands of staring eyes, the Jade Lake's fairy offered up the 3 fire source stones she got from the demon cave. The fire source stones were marked with Grandmaster Rong Yun's spirit powers, so it could not be faked. Grandmaster Rong Yun weighted these 3 fire source stones in his hand. The depths of his eyes were like an ancient well without a ripple, deep and unfathomable. He gently stroked the patterns on the fire source stones. Quite a while later, he lifted up his head to announce. However, just at the second he was about to announce that Li Yaoyao would become his disciple, a voice from afar that was coming closer loudly shouted, "Wait!" This voice seemed to come from an extremely far place, but it was clearly resounding at the side of everyone's ears. Just when everyone was surprised, a figure slowly floated down. This was an extremely beautiful woman. It seemed that she was no older than 20 years of age. Chapter 766, Cultivation Breakthrough, 4. One could only see her dressed in a purple brocade skirt made of muslin, so long that it trailed on the ground. A long, snow-white satin cloth was softly wrapped around her fine jade-like arms. Her long, jet-black hair gave off a sparkling and translucent luster. Her facial features seemed to be finely carved like delicate gems. Her fine jade-like nose was lovable and charming, with lips the color of which was as bright as oriental cherry blossoms. She was so beautiful that she could not have been produced locally. At this time, she looked like the fairy from the 9th heavens, coming down to the mortal world. From high up in the sky, with every step she took, a lotus grew as she slowly descended. Like fireworks, she was like a mist, seemingly made of nothingness but gorgeous. How beautiful! When they saw this woman's appearance, almost everyone inhaled a breath of cold air. Who was this woman? Many people were asking this question inside their hearts. This woman walked over to Grandmaster Rong Yun with graceful movements. Finally, she stood in front of him determinedly. Her facial expression consisted of a smile. That pair of pitch-black and deep, well-like eyes flashed with a trace of cold light. Seeing the person who had just arrived, Grandmaster Rong Yun's clean and handsome eyebrows wrinkled slightly, the look in his eyes appearing even more complicated. Rong Yun, long time no see. The corner of the absolutely beautiful woman's mouth raised with a hint of an enchanting smile that could attract and absorb a person's soul. Grandmaster Rong Yun frowned and humphed indifferently. Fairy Yin Xia, I trust you have been well since we last met. Fairy Yin Xia? Just these 3 words suddenly frightened everyone so much that their complexions became pale. They lowered their eyes, to make it pleasing to the eyes, and dared not cast half a gaze at her again. It was Fairy Yin Xia. At that time, what kind of awe-inspiring character was this? Legend said that she cruelly murdered her superior, and that she killed people like cutting grass. Once, during one night, she massacred every family in a city. It was also rumored that she had once stolen many talented children that the 10 most powerful families were cultivating, provoking the 10 most powerful families to send out the order to kill her. Even up till now, on the continent's bounty list, the monetary reward for her was still ranked at number 2. Now, she actually openly appeared in the Eastern Ling Empire, furthermore, in a public place with numerous people. From Fairy Yin Xia's face, one could not see any hints from the marks of time. At this time, she was still as pretty as a young lady. Her skin was like condensed amber. One blow could break it. Everyone bowed their heads in succession, muttering to themselves inwardly. Rumor had it that Fairy Yin Xia had loved Grandmaster Rong Yun bitterly for many years. Could it be that the rumor was actually true? Fairy Yin Xia stood fixedly before Grandmaster Rong Yun. This absolute beauty had on a complexion of being fully occupied. A cold light flashed across that pair of beautiful eyes. Rong Yun, is this the personal disciple you want to accept? Fairy Yin Xia sized Li Yao Yao up from top to bottom. Li Yao Yao had a thin scarf covering her face. Tender and beautiful, she was faintly discernible and appeared even more quick-witted. Seeing Li Yao Yao's appearance, Fairy Yin Xia's eyes flashed, the corners of her eyes evoking a taunting sneer. Grandmaster Rong Yun seemed somewhat displeased and lightly humphed. Is this a place you can come to? Why don't you hurry up and go? I asked you something. You really want to accept this young girl that's as delicate as a flower to be your personal disciple? On Fairy Yin Xia's beautiful as a flower face, the smile did not diminish. Grandmaster Rong Yun frowned. He just remained silent and said nothing. However, this silence of his was like tacit agreement in Fairy Yin Xia's eyes. She did not bother Grandmaster Rong Yun again and instead turned her head to directly size up Li Yao Yao. So, it's you that has been following at Rong Yun's side for half a year's time? Li Yao Yao felt somewhat nervous inside her heart. As the one of the 10 super influential family and the Jade Lakesley family's little princess, she naturally knew more than other people about things. Wasn't Fairy Yin Xia already secretly attacked and killed by the number 1 highest awarded person on the bounty list? How could she be appearing now? Jade Lake's fairy? TSK. Tisk, spite and disdain appeared in Fairy Yin Xia's eyes. I'll give you a chance now. Do you want to withdraw voluntarily or be forced to withdraw? The meaning of Fairy Yin Xia's words. This person from the younger generation does not understand. At her back, she had Jade Lakesley family as a supporter. Li Yao Yao raised her eyes, neither servilely nor overbearingly. Her expression was calm and collected as she smilingly looked at Fairy Yin Xia. Hearing this tone of yours, you don't intend to withdraw voluntarily? The corner of Fairy Yin Xia's mouth hooked up darkly. Chapter 767, Cultivation Breakthrough, 5. What business is it of the senior when it comes to this young one formally becoming an apprentice? Senior had better go without delay. Otherwise, you may not be able to leave. Li Yao Yao grit her teeth, pretending to be calm and composed. If she could be persuaded by Fairy Yin Xia to withdraw with just a few lines, then in the future, what face would she have to stand in this world? How would the common people see her? Therefore, Li Yao Yao must give a rejection firmly. Even though the corner of Fairy Yin Xia's mouth had raised up in a strange smile that gave birth to fear in her heart. Tisk, tiske, tiske. Having not left the mountain for so many years, even a silly little girl could bully this fairy. Fairy Yin Xia cast a mocking glance at Li Yaoyao, then her gaze met with Grandmaster Rong Yun's line of sight. At that time, what you promised, does it still count? Fairy Yin Xia unblinkingly looked at Grandmaster Rong Yun. In the throne room, everyone below the steps were all extremely curious. They did not dare to meet Fairy Yin Xia's flamboyant gaze, and also did not dare to look face to face with Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes that were remote and deep as an abyss. However, their lowered eyes were raging with flames for gossip. Grandmaster Rong Yun and Fairy Yin Xia. Could it be that back then, they really had a love affair? The promise Grandmaster Rong Yun made to Fairy Yin Xia. What could it be? But they could not press them and did not dare to make any sound. They could only quietly wait for the gossip to explode. Only after a long time could the sound of Grandmaster Rong Yun sighing softly be heard. Lit Yin, is there a need for you to be like this again? Just a little nickname actually made Fairy Yin Xia's figure shake slightly. When she lifted those eyes again, that pair of eyes, that were like frozen ice, had a trace of melting. I just want to be this way. What are you going to do about it? Seeing Rong Yun's tensely knit eyebrows and clearly rather awkward expression on his handsome face, strong evil tendencies streaked across Fairy Yin Xia's face. That time, when she confessed her affection to him, he also had this sort of expression. She simply hated this expression of his. Little Yin, is there a need for you to be like this? Grandmaster Rong Yun sighed, rather conspicuously embarrassed. You say it. Does that promise still count or not? In front of the person she actually loved, Fairy Yin Xia, who was originally exceedingly correct and indifferent, was also just like an ordinary person. Grandmaster Rong Yun pondered over it slightly. Clearly, he was having a hard time making a decision. Only after muttering irresolutely to himself with half a promise, he then looked towards Li Yaoyao. You are determined to pay your respect to a master. Li Yaoyao did not know exactly what drug Grandmaster Rong Yun and Fairy Yin Xia were selling inside their own conversation. But, for the matter of paying her respect to a master, she was incomparably resolute. In order to let her pay respect to him as master, what kind of hardships and great price did the Jade Lakesley family pay? As a result, Li Yaoyao took a step forward, bowed and made her salute. Yes, I, Li Yaoyao, am resolutely determined. I must pay my respect to you as my master. Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes paused. You really have thought it through clearly? The originally indifferent and refined Grandmaster Rong Yun quite uncharacteristically seemed somewhat long-winded. This was not something he would characteristically do. However, although Li Yaoyao felt there was something strange about Grandmaster Rong Yun's behavior, but because of being intellectually occupied by the execution of the plan of paying respect to the master, she nodded seriously and said, Yes. Then you should kneel down. Grandmaster Rong Yun sighed slowly and seemed somewhat regretful. Hearing what was said, Li Yaoyao's heart was joyful. After going through untold hardships, Grandmaster Rong Yun finally wanted to accept her as a disciple. Consequently, Li Yaoyao, who was crying tears of joy, hurriedly kneeled on both knees on the ground. She paid respect by knocking her head loudly to the ground 3 times in succession. However, just after she had finished knocking her head loudly for the 3rd time, Grandmaster Rong Yun's figure had already moved 10 meters away. In his place was Fairy Yin Xia's sinister and smiling complexion. Ha ha ha, Li Yaoyao, hurry up and pay respect to your master. Fairy Yin Xia smiled darkly as she looked at her sideways. Her eyes were full of evil tendencies. Confronted with this suddenly occurring great change, Li Yaoyao's entire person was stupefied. Chapter 768, Cultivation Breakthrough, 6. She felt puzzled as she stared foolishly at Fairy Yin Xia, then looked at Grandmaster Rong Yun who stood with hands behind his back nearby. She anxiously said, I already formally became an apprentice to a master. This in the end. What's going on? Fairy Yin Xia flung her sleeves, ice-cold eyes casting a disdainful glance at Li Yaoyao. At that time, Grandmaster Rong Yun mistakenly killed the beloved disciple of this fairy. Consequently, he promised that in the future, when he had a disciple, he would allow this fairy to choose. And now, this fairy has chosen you. Faced with Fairy Yin Xia's hardly concealed disdain, Li Yaoyao was suddenly scared witless from the bottom of her heart. Master, Li Yaoyao, who had already performed the ceremony to become the formal disciple of a master, wanting to sob and with weeping eyes, looked towards Grandmaster Rong Yun, crying for help. Grandmaster, not without some regret, said, "You showed a lot of potential in the future. Properly follow little Yin. She will not treat you unfairly." This is not. Now, there was a very complicated expression in Li Yaoyao's eyes. She had been through many trials and tribulations, passing one test after another. Could it all be just to pay her respects to Yin Xia, this huge witch, as a master? This? Grandmaster Rong Yun was simply playing with her. No, out of the question. I'm not going to pay my respects to a master. Li Yaoyao directly stood up, promptly shaking her head. Yin Xia, this malicious witch, since the beginning, hasn't liked her. If she was to follow her, in public and in private, she would never let her off. Who knew that a malicious expression flashed through Fairy Yin Xia's eye? Just now, you had already entered under Rong Yun's door. Want to back out? Hee. Does the Jade Lakesley family not want to exist on this continent? Under Grandmaster Rong Yun's door. Was it something you wanted to become apprentice to and could be apprenticed to? Want to back out and you can back out of the promise? Having heard what was said, Li Yaoyao's complexion immediately became white. Her body was nearly on the verge of collapse. At this moment, she really hated herself. Hated herself for being this stupid. Why blow up Su Luo in the demon cave? If Su Luo was now alive, she would have someone to replace her in this position. In the audience, Li Yaoxiang and Li Aoqiang were also stupefied by this unforeseen event that suddenly arose. No matter what, he would never have imagined that with victory in sight, unexpectedly, Fairy Yin Xia, this misfortune, would appear. Grandmaster Rong Yun, how is this okay? How could our Yaoyao formally become the disciple of Fairy Yin Xia? Li Yaoxiang took a step forward. His brows were wrinkled until they nearly tied into a knot. In his heart, he simply hated Fairy Yin Xia to death. Who would have thought that Grandmaster Rong Yun would slowly shake his head, his voice clear and cold as ice? Li Yaoyao has already entered under this apothecary's door, and cannot be altered. But, even though Li Yaoxiang knew it could not be altered, however, wasn't this too unreasonable? How could his family's Yaoyao be this unlucky? Grandmaster Rong Yun waved his hand to stop his words, frowned and said, "Just now, this apothecary had already repeatedly asked. She definitely agreed to it, but..." Li Yaoxiang tried to explain. "There's no but." Fairy Yin Xia looked down from up high. She smilingly looked at Li Yaoyao. "Do you want to formally become a disciple or have us as the enemy of the Jade Lakesley family?" To have Fairy Yin Xia as an enemy, that was what kind of dreadful matter? With Fairy Yin Xia's temper of unfeelingly killing her superiors, and that unfathomably deep cultivation level, who would dare to leave the Jade Lakesley family to go on a journey to cultivate through experience? To have Grandmaster Rong Yun as an enemy, that kind of consequence was even scarier than having Fairy Yin Xia as an enemy. Confronted with a tangled dilemma to choose from, the Jade Lake's fairy nearly collapsed. She had painstakingly become a candidate in the selection process, passing one test after another. Ultimately, how could she have gotten this kind of result? Grandmaster Rong Yun. Grandmaster Rong Yun was that kind of person with deep plans and distance thought. It seemed as if earlier, he had already guessed what would happen today, and as for her, was she just a piece on his chessboard? Author. How could Fairy Yin Xia be the main female character's mother? The author is still trying hard to make her word count quota. Chapter 769, Cultivation Breakthrough, 7. Thinking up to now, the Jade Lake's fairy lifted her eyes to look at Grandmaster Rong Yun. Yet, at this time, Grandmaster Rong Yun also looked at her, his eyes revealing a touch of regret and a sigh. The Jade Lake's fairy shook her head in her heart. No, Grandmaster Rong Yun must not have known ahead of time that Fairy Yin Xia would come. Everything must have been coincidental. But what should she do now? Fairy Yin Xia glared like a tiger watching her prey. Even though Grandmaster Rong Yun was regretful, he still did not make a move. The Jade Lake's fairy, wanting to sob, weepingly looked towards Grandmaster Rong Yun. Her eyes looked at him with appeal. Master. But Grandmaster Rong Yun slowly shook his head. Lastly, he even patted her shoulder. Obedient disciple, in the future, you will be under little Yan's door. Go and properly follow her. Having heard what was said, both of the Jade Lake Fairy's legs weakened and nearly collapsed. This kind of result was not the one she wanted from the beginning. She wanted to rebel, but Li Yaoxiang used his eyes to hint to her, asking her not to act blindly without thinking. After all, having both Fairy Yin Xia and Grandmaster Rong Yun as enemies at the same time, this kind of price, even if it was the Jade Lakesley family, they still could not afford it. How could it be like this? In the end, how could this matter have changed to the current situation? Li Yaoyao continuously cried out in her heart. This kind of indignation pressed down until it nearly destroyed her heart. Fairy Yin Xia grabbed Li Yaoyao single-handedly, the corner of her mouth hooking into a cold smile. She coldly said, "Let's go." Just at the moment Fairy Yin Xia was leaving, when she took a last look at Grandmaster Rong Yun, a surprised expression flashed through her eyes. This appearance of Grandmaster Rong Yun's. Wasn't Li Yaoyao the disciple he had chosen since the beginning? The disciple he favored being snatched away, even though he seemed regretful, but he also didn't resist. This doesn't seem right-o. Just at this moment, from outside the throne room, came the sound of two people's slow and gentle footsteps. However, speaking of Su Luo and Bai Qining who were trapped within that little room, after 5 days of working hard. No, with regards to Su Luo, she had worked hard for 500 days. Su Luo finally, with a spurt of energy, fused all 1,024 silver threads into 512 threads. At the same time, the nothingness of space that was originally only the size of a watermelon now was already the size of 2 people. Su Luo pulled Bai Qining to enter the nothingness of space together. As to the size of the nothingness of space, it was just able to cover the both of them. Let's go. We are returning. Su Luo raised her head. Her pair of eyes was extremely quick-witted, burning and shining with the splendor of the stars. The corner of Bai Qinying's mouth revealed a smiling expression. Really didn't expect such a mystical thing actually really appeared on Su Luo's body. Being a space mage was fine, but she was actually able to cultivate out a nothingness of space outside of her space. The gaze that Bai Qining looked at Su Luo with was abstruse and distantly remote. It seemed somewhat complex. Su Luo didn't think much of it. After all, these marvels, with regards to others, were unimaginable, but with regards to her, was simply like a common occurrence. She was already used to it. Come on. Hold on tightly. You must by all means not let go. Su Luo indicated briefly at Bai Qining, who somewhat did not dare to get close to her. Okay. Bai Qinying's hand reached out to wrap around her lovely slender waistline. In the instant it wrapped around her, on his always happy and smiling face, unexpectedly, an inconceivable blush appeared. If it was found out by Lan Xian and them, wouldn't they have laughed to death at him? He, as the grand and stately young master of Baichen, because of this kind of limbs touching, would unexpectedly blush? Bai Qining held back his expression, deadly earnestly standing up straight. However, he who had the dominance in height would always unconsciously cast glances at Su Luo's body from the corner of his eyes. Su Luo clearly took him as a good brother and completely did not think elsewhere. She even disliked the fact that Bai Qining wasn't holding on tightly enough, afraid that halfway through, they would be stuck in the middle of the wall. Consequently, her hand turned over and strongly seized hold of Bai Qinying's lean waist intimately. Are you prepared? He looked to the sky for the time and finally could only helplessly say, "The matter is already like this, then we can only first rush back. After all, Now, the demon cave has automatically closed again. Even if we want to enter it, we can't enter it. That may not necessarily be true. Su Luo gloomily shook her head. If the nothingness of space can envelop me and take me out of the little stone room, naturally, it can also take me inside the demon cave. Bei Chen clearly had a helpless expression. Even if you return to look for the fire source stones, there's not enough time left. Su Luo slapped her own head and finally could only helplessly be resigned to her fate. Forget it. If it is decreed by fate that I won't become Grandmaster Rong Yun's last disciple, I can only be resigned to my fate. Let's go. Going to scare Li Yaoyao is also good. In one's lifetime, how could every matter be completed according to a person's expectations? Regret and hope being shattered was beautiful. Su Luo could only console herself like this in her heart. Only, her expression from beginning to the end was somewhat melancholy. The two people arrived at the royal palace and felt that a countless number of people had congregated in the throne room. As a result, Su Luo and Bei Chen exchanged a glance and neatly flew in that direction. Therefore, it resulted in the scene before, of the sound of footsteps coming from outside the throne room. Su Luo lifted one foot to step into the throne room. In the beginning, no one had discovered her. However, very quickly, one person turned back and accidentally saw her figure. This person immediately became stupefied. Chapter 771, Cultivation Breakthrough 9, the second person, the third person, until the end, when nearly everyone was staring at Su Luo with an identical expression. Their mouths were opened wide, their eyes staring until they were round as a circle. All of them had their attention fixed on Su Luo. The Jade Lakes Fairy was the most shocked among them. You. Today, the Jade Lakes Fairy had already been shocked until she was on the verge of collapse. When she saw Su Luo appear, immediately, it seemed as if she saw a ghost. Her slender finger pointed at Su Luo, eyes opened very wide, stammering, nearly unable to speak. Su Luo walked, step by step, towards Li Yaoyao. Right now, her mouth was hooked in a wickedly cold smile, like the Azura who had walked out of hell. That smiling expression took measure of her and carried a strange ray of light. Finally, step by step, Su Luo pressed Li Yaoyao, looking at her with a smile that was not quite a smile. Her tone carried a touch of cynicism as she said, "I heard. You spread the news of my death everywhere?" Li Yaoyao stared at Su Luo in shock and was forced to retreat, step by step. Now, her mind was nearly driven mad. Wasn't this little slut dead? Wasn't she blown to death by the 9th-ranked spirit pinball? How could she have walked out of there and still be alive right now? Why was it like this? Why? Su Luo menacingly pressed in, step by step. Her mouth was hooked into a wicked, grim smile. Seeing me walk out alive must be very unexpected, right? With a bang sound, Li Yaoyao bumped into a pillar. The bump almost made her fall down. However, Su Luo still wouldn't let her go, and she looked down from above at Li Yaoyao who had stumbled. 9th-ranked spirit pinball, your Li family is really generous. Su Luo, in you guys' eyes, is worth a 9th-ranked spirit pinball. Even though Su Luo did not directly say that Li Yaoyao used a 9th-ranked spirit pinball to smash her, but the meaning in her words was the same. SSSSS, once Su Luo said these words, immediately, nearly everyone at the scene was astonished. Su Luo didn't die. In order to kill Su Luo, Li Yaoyao actually used a 9th-ranked spirit pinball to smash her. How could a 9th-ranked spirit pinball be something Li Yaoyao, in the younger generation, be able to take out whenever she wanted? How could there not be the support of the older generations? Able to stand in the throne room, none of them were fools. Such a simple mental puzzle, almost everyone knew it. As a result, without Su Luo stating it clearly, everyone had clearly understood the truth. No, you are lying. Just at this moment, it seemed as if Li Yaoyao had woken up from a dream. She yelled at Su Luo, "What 9th-ranked spirit pinball? What nonsense are you saying? Li Yaoyao, you still won't admit to it." Haha, Do you want me to tell everyone why, when you went out, that you had changed all of your clothing? Su Luo, with a ghost of a smile, lifted an eyebrow. Shut up. I order you to shut up. That segment of memories was the one that Li Yaoyao hated the most in her heart. Now, being brought up by Su Luo in front of everybody, she was so furious that she wished she could rush up and tear Su Luo into pieces. Seeing Li Yaoyao's, this kind of extremely frantic condition, everyone was somewhat puzzled. Wasn't the Jade Lake's fairy supposed to be graceful, composed, gentle, and amiable? The her today, compared to the normal her, was like two completely different people. However, with regards to the questions Su Luo tossed out, everyone clearly wanted to hear the gossip. Each and every one of them was looking at Su Luo with curiosity. Now, all of a sudden, a bright idea occurred to Li Yaoyao. She loudly shouted to Su Luo, "Since you have come out of the demon cave then, how many pieces of fire source stones do you have in your hand?" Hearing this sentence from the Jade Lake's fairy, everyone's face showed a complicated expression. What the Jade Lake's fairy was thinking, they had all realized. Hearing what was said, Su Luo, not without some regret, took out the fire source stones from within her chest pocket and helplessly said, "I only got 2 pieces, not as many as yours. Alas, it really is a pity." Chapter 772, Last Disciple of a Master, 1. The Jade Lake's fairy had originally calculated perfectly. As long as Su Luo took out more than 3 pieces of fire source stones, then this time, the winner would be Su Luo. Then, she would have grounds to let Su Luo pay her respects under Fairy Yunxia's door. But now this little slut's luck was unexpectedly bad. She only got 2 stones. This was simply too much. Su Luo, with a ghost of a smile, raised her eyebrows at the Jade Lake's fairy. "You should feel assured. I'm no match for you. This time, it's your win." While speaking, Su Luo even smiled happily and patted Li Yaoyao's shoulder. Li Yaoyao's wrathful gaze glared towards Su Luo, wishing she could cut her into 1,000 pieces. Who would want to win now at this juncture? She wished she had never participated in this competition. Okay? Fairy Yin Xia saw the anger in the Jade Lake's fairy's expression and swept a rather profoundly deep glance at Su Luo. Su Luo's appearance disrupted her rhythm, therefore, she was also in no hurry to leave now. Su Luo, holding the 2 fire source stones with both hands, respectfully and deferentially, offered them to Grandmaster Rong Yun. Grandmaster Rong Yun released the spirit records within the fire source stones, therefore, only he could, with one glance, see whether or not this was placed by him. At this moment, his eyes, deep like a vast body of water, shot a faint glance at Su Luo. He carelessly tossed those fire source stones aside. Fairy Yin Xia felt that something was more and more fishy. Suddenly, suspicion surfaced in her heart. Other people might not understand Rong Yun, but she was very knowledgeable about his character. She always felt that Rong Yun wasn't so indifferent to the girl facing him. Rather, it was a kind of alienation that was deliberately done to maintain his distance. Could it be? A cold light flashed through Fairy Yin Xia's eyes as she abandoned Li Yaoyao, and with graceful, womanly movements, walked towards Su Luo. She carefully sized up Su Luo, itching to find a clue on her face. However, the result disappointed her. This girl's looks was not bad, but Fairy Yin Xia couldn't find the thing she wanted on her face. However, Fairy Yin Xia's character had always been that she would rather kill the wrong person than let someone slip by. Therefore, immediately, she threw an enchanting smile that could hook a person's soul towards Grandmaster Rong Yun. "This girl is actually not bad. How about you just lump her in and give them both to me?" A cold aura flashed through Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes, but it was quick as lightning. Nobody detected it. One only saw him slowly raise his head, his freezing cold gaze staring fixedly at Fairy Yin Xia. "Stop while you are ahead." He declined. It was as if Fairy Yin Xia's face was ruthlessly slapped by someone, her complexion suddenly becoming stiff. "I'll use Li Yaoyao to exchange with you. I now want this girl." First, let's not talk about how Grandmaster Rong Yun feels, only speaking of Li Yaoyao. Originally, her despair had reached the extremes. When she heard this voice, she was immediately full of hope, and her beautiful eyes gave off gorgeous rays of light. She didn't care if Fairy Yin Xia had a brain cramp. She only knew she had an opportunity to remain behind. Comparing herself with Su Luo, so long as the person wasn't an idiot, that person would know who to pick. Li Yaoyao was so excited that she made a fist. Quite clearly, Li Yaoyao unintentionally also considered Nangong Luyun to be an idiot. Not only Li Yaoyao, everyone from the Jade Lakesley family was gazing hopefully with anticipation at Grandmaster Rong Yun. From the bottom of their hearts, they hoped he would say the word, okay. But Grandmaster Rong Yun's response made them all lose hope. One could only see Grandmaster Rong Yun's good-looking sharp eyebrows wrinkle slightly. He looked at Fairy Yin Xia with displeasure. Ultimately, it changed into a sigh. Until when do you still want to be willful? These words clearly carried a touch of spoiling and indulging overtone, from the point of view of people with feelings. Fairy Yin Xia's originally icily arrogant expression immediately softened. She once again carefully examined Su Luo with a glance. Determining that she was not the person she was looking for, only then did she snort twice. Okay, I'll just leave this lesser one for you. I won't fight with you over her. Chapter 773, Last Disciple of a Master, 2. Once Fairy Yin Xia said these words, it immediately destroyed Li Yaoyao's hopes. Li Yaoyao, wanting to sob with a weeping expression, looked towards Grandmaster Rong Yun. Master? Didn't Master obviously favor her? Didn't the Master think the most highly of her? Clearly, as long as he said one word, she would avoid the ending of following this malicious witch. But let's go. Fairy Yin Xia gave a cold jeer, grabbing onto Li Yaoyao, and was about to leave. At the last moment, Li Yaoyao didn't know where she got the strength from. She strived and struggled free from Fairy Yin Xia's hand, furiously saying, I'm not going. I will not go with you. However, Fairy Yin Xia was one of the top experts that could be mentioned on equal terms as Grandmaster Rong Yun. How could she be someone who would let Li Yaoyao say she won't go and not go? Fairy Yin Xia firmly grabbed onto Li Yaoyao, but Li Yaoyao struggled with all her strength to throw her off. Just at this critical moment, the muslin cloth on Li Yaoyao's face suddenly came off. Ah! In the throne room, didn't know who it was that first exploded out with the shriek. Soon after, everyone's gaze congregated on Li Yaoyao's body. Now, Li Yaoyao had also realized that the muslin cloth covering her face had come off. Nervously, she subconsciously covered her face. However, her face that was scratched by the little divine dragon and was thus crisscrossed with scars was very clear. With only one glance, you'd never forget it. No. Li Yaoyao was close to falling apart as she covered her face. Her entire body was trembling nonstop. Everyone was all foolishly staring at Li Yaoyao. Their gazes contained shock, some had sympathy, some had pity, and still more had regret. How could the Jade Lake's fairy endure such gazes? She turned around and wanted to run out. However, Fairy Yin Xia's sleeves lifted up, a green-colored long vine directly wrapping around her slender waist. The Jade Lake's fairy was flipped over in midair. When she landed, her body was tied up by the green vine into a wooden stake. Only that face with the crisscross scars was exposed. Release me. Release me. Quickly release me. Li Yaoyao was so anxious that tears continued to flow out. This kind of appearance being revealed in such a public place, asking her in the future, what face would she have left to see people? It's really a pity. Originally a devastatingly beautiful face. Now it's actually, alas. Originally a refined and elegant Jade Lake's fairy. Now, we can only call her the Scarred Fairy. Such deep cuts, don't know if it is possible to cure. With Grandmaster Rongyun present, you are still afraid it can't be cured? Momentarily, everyone was discussing spiritedly, but their gazes were staring fixedly at the Jade Lake's fairy. Chapter 774, Last Disciple of a Master, 3, however. After seeing the porcelain bottle land in Fairy Yin Xia's hand, her eyes immediately dimmed from having lost hope. Grandmaster Rong Yun gave a quiet cough, then said to Li Yaoyao, "This apothecary only has this bottle left. You should follow her properly, and the scars on your face will naturally be cured." This sentence by Grandmaster Rong Yun gave Li Yaoyao no choice but to follow Fairy Yin Xia, because only if she followed Fairy Yin Xia would the scars on her face have the possibility of being cured. "Master," Li Yaoyao wept, wishing to sob. Why was it that she felt more and more that Grandmaster Rong Yun was pushing her into Fairy Yin Xia's hands? Was this really her misperception? However, Grandmaster Rong Yun merely sighed and shook his head. He even patted her shoulder. "From now on, you only have Fairy Yin Xia as your master. Don't call out the wrong person again." Don't know if it was because Grandmaster Rong Yun's patting was too strong, or whether the meaning in his words was too heavy. In short, after Grandmaster Rong Yun's words and his manner, Li Yaoyao's complexion became deathly white, her footsteps subconsciously retreating back once. So unreconciled, really unreconciled. The Jade Lake's fairy's face was flooded with tears, yet she had no choice but to raise her spirit, preparing to follow Fairy Yin Xia and leave. The scars on her face, she had already invited doctors to ask for medicine, but all of them had no way to cure it. Now, her only hope was in Fairy Yin Xia's hand. No matter what, she must first follow it. Able to snatch away the disciple most loved by Grandmaster Rong Yun from his hands. Originally, Fairy Yin Xia was very happy, but she always felt that Rong Yun's manner was somewhat fishy. But what specifically, she could not say. That woman's appearance was unequaled, not even speaking of Li Yaoyao. Even she, herself, fell far short of that kind of beauty. Although Su Luo, that girl's, appearance was not bad, it was not as good as that woman's 1 in 10,000th beauty. Therefore, she absolutely was not the vile spawn left behind by that woman. Thinking up to here, she shook her head, tossing this strange feeling from her mind. "Let's go." Fairy Yin Xia prepared to leave. Just at this moment, Anya Ming's calm and collected figure stood out from the crowd. A cold laugh was revealed on his handsome facial features. His gaze unblinkingly looked at the Jade Lake's fairy. "Just like this, you want to go?" Suddenly, Li Yaoyao's heart had a very bad premonition. Anya Ming, normally, his smiling expression was gentle and mild. But he was deeply shrewd and an expert strategist, among them few. Aside from Nangong Luyun, the most formidable was Anya Ming. "What do you think you are going to do?" Li Yaoyao indignantly scolded as she gave a snort. Originally, she had paid her respects to Grandmaster Rong Yun as her teacher. Now, she had to follow this female devil. What could be more pitiful than this? Anya Ming, what more could he do? The corner of Anya Ming's mouth hooked up into a smile that was not a smile. A cynical cold light flashed through his eyes. The Jade Lake's fairy seems to have forgotten the oath from that day. After he took one step and made a mistake, Lan Xian and Beichening had kept silent and stood behind him. Su Luo was also all smiles as she stood at his side. Momentarily, all four of them were staring at Li Yaoyao with a ghost of a smile. It immediately made her feel a rather large pressure. If Anya Ming hadn't said it, then it was fortunate. Once he mentioned it, immediately, everyone recalled the circumstances on that day. That day, when Li Yaoyao walked out of the demon cave, she had firmly vowed that Su Luo had already died inside. She had also said an additional sentence. If Su Luo did not die, then she would commit suicide in front of everyone by slitting her own throat. This sentence resounded with strength, and it had substance. Therefore, everyone had remembered it deeply in their minds. Oh heavens, isn't this pressing the Jade Lake's fairy to commit suicide? What will the Jade Lake's fairy do now? Everyone must assume the consequence of the things one did before. If it was not her who first harmed Su Luo, then spread the news of Su Luo's death behind her, how could she now once again face this kind of embarrassing scene? Chapter 775, Last Disciple of a Master, 4. Speaking of this, the Jade Lake's fairy was really Alas, she seems gentle and warm. Who would have known that her methods were so vicious? That's slander. Even if the Jade Lakes Fairy used a spirit pinball to smash Su Luo, so what? Their Jade Lakesley family has spirit pinballs. However they want to smash it, they can smash it, as long as they are happy. For a moment, everyone was discussing spiritedly. The group that defended the Jade Lakes family continuously issued all kinds of arguments to defend Li Yaoyao. However, apart from the group that defended the Jade Lakes family, there were always some who were clear-headed. They, through watching a series of events, had already seen through the fact that Li Yaoyao's outside appearance was very different from her real inner quality. Merely that, for many years, Li Yaoyao's reputation was shown off, so there were numerous admirers. Wanting to throw her off that pedestal was not a matter that could be done overnight. Not speaking of how everyone reacted. Just speaking of Li Yaoyao. Ever since Anya Ming's mouth had asked that sentence, Li Yaoyao's complexion immediately became pale, without a trace of blood. At that time, she really was 100% certain that Su Luo had already died. Who would have known that she would once again strangely crawl back out? At this moment, the Jade Lakes Fairy wished she could slap herself in the face heavily. The Jade Lakes Fairy's memory can't be that bad, right? Lan Xian provocatively sneered out. The corner of Anya Ming's mouth hooked into a wicked smile. It doesn't matter if the Jade Lakes Fairy has forgotten. That day, everyone here was present. Everyone has all helped her to remember it. The two people echoed each other, their coordination perfect. Immediately, it made Li Yaoyao's mouth suffer bitterness. Increasingly, it was hard for her to speak. What could she say? If she said she hadn't, but that day, a lot of people were present at the scene. How could she even deny it? But if she said she had, Anya Ming and them would definitely force her to commit suicide by slitting her throat. What to do? What ought she do? The Jade Lakes Fairy was so anxious that her heart was like an ant, bumping into things in confusion. From childhood to grown-up, so many years, she never had a day that was as thoroughly full of bad luck as today. Just when Li Yaoyao was so anxious that fine lines of cold sweat was coming out of her forehead, Fairy Yin Xia frowned slightly. What's going on? She coldly snorted in displeasure. Anya Ming cupped his hand in respect towards Fairy Yin Xia and briefly told the matter once through for her. There was also this kind of matter? Fairy Yin Xia sent a disdainful glance towards Li Yaoyao. Under thousands of staring eyes, how could this possibly still be denied? Li Yaoyao's pair of hands were nervously twisting together, and she anxiously nodded her head. Slap. Fairy Yin Xia directly sent a hand to slap her, hitting Li Yaoyao until she tumbled down in place. This clear echo of a slapping sound immediately frightened everyone until their hearts had jumped into their throats. Even though everyone knew that Fairy Yin Xia was a female devil, however, that was what they had heard. How could it be as shocking as seeing it in person today? Li Yaoxiang's throat moved a little. His hands at his sides were clenched tightly into fists. However, ultimately, he still did not stand out. The Jade Lakes Fairy covered her right cheek with an incredulous expression as she lifted her face to look at Fairy Yin Xia. Originally, how noble and refined was the Jade Lakes Fairy. But to her right now, with scars that crisscrossed her face, being beaten and scolded by Fairy Yin Xia at the slightest pretext. It could even be said that in a split second, she had fallen from the clouds of heaven and into hell. What are you looking at? Idiot! Fairy Yin Xia coldly snorted. This kind of idiot. Was she really the disciple Rong Yun favored? When did his eyesight become so bad? If she was not snatched from Rong Yun's hand, Fairy Yin Xia would have already discarded Li Yaoyao long ago. Fairy Yin Xia gazed back, and she sent Su Luo an annoyed glance. My, Yin Xia's, disciple. Who dares to force her to commit suicide by slitting her throat? Seeing Su Luo and the others were silent, Fairy Yin Xia gave a heavy snort. At worst, in the future, I'll spare you once from death. This matter of committing suicide through cutting one's throat, just call it even and crossed off by a stroke of the pen. When she was saying these words, the surroundings were cold from a bitingly chill light. Even the temperature had dropped to the freezing point. Grandmaster Rong Yun used the corner of his eyes to shoot a glance at Su Luo, as if hinting that she shouldn't say more. Author's words. Continue to count the words. P.S. Some readers shouldn't assume that by right, that at a fixed time, it must be updated, okay? The author is not a robot. If the plot was written randomly, one day, 20 chapters, even I could write it. But is this the result you guys want? Chapter 776, Last Disciple of a Master, 5. Su Luo was not at all stupid. With regards to Fairy Yin Xia's temper of, I'm the only one that should be worshipped, naturally, she would view her ego to be more important than anything else. What she hated the most was when other people disobeyed her. Moreover, this female devil's temperament was unpredictable, going from overcast to clear. She was also a bloodthirsty murderer who killed people as if she was cutting grass. God knows if in the next second, she would take a killing action. Therefore, when Anya Ming was about to speak again, Su Luo tugged at his sleeves. A smiling expression appeared on Su Luo's face. To sincerely comply with Fairy Yin Xia's wish, this junior from the younger generation has no objection. She believed that the more magnanimous she acted, the more difficult Li Yaoyao's days would be. Fairy Yin Xia gave a cold snort. She only wished to take Li Yaoyao and leave. However, at this time, Li Yaoyao turned her head back. A strange sneer appeared on that face, disfigured with scars. Su Luo, I want to challenge you. Li Yaoyao's tone was dark, fierce, and vicious. It carried an indescribable kind of evil intent. Seeing Su Luo frown, a murderous cold light flashed through the depths of Li Yaoyao's eyes. The battle competition between the four countries with my hand. I will personally kill you. Finished speaking this sentence, Li Yaoyao took a step forward and walked out without looking back. Only a long time after Fairy Yin Xia and Li Yaoyao had left, did everyone return to their senses. Now, everyone's gazes had inevitably centered on Su Luo's body. Grandmaster indicated that Su Luo should step forward. You were able to come out from the demon cave. It can be seen that your aptitude is not that bad. He seemed somewhat grudging. Li Yaoyao, a pity. Since it's like this, then this apothecary will accept you as a disciple. Grandmaster Rong Yun's tone seemed to be rather reluctant. Su Luo immediately froze and stared, somewhat dazed. Just now, Lan Xian had already, in a low tone, whispered to Su Luo's ear of the things that had happened before. First, Li Yaoyao was accepted as the Grandmaster's disciple, but who would have known that the situation would soon be reversed? She was snatched up by Fairy Yin Xia and finally, unexpectedly, Su Luo conveniently got the winning prize. This matter of becoming a formal apprentice really was full of many twists and turns, with a lot of up and downs. Su Luo's heart was naturally very happy. She kneeled on both knees. She conducted a neat and proper ceremony to formally become apprentice to a master. Grandmaster expression was tranquil and calm. His clear and cold voice only said, "Get up, 3 days from now, come with your senior brother to find me." He icily left this sentence and immediately departed. Chapter 777, Last Disciple of a Master, 6. What congratulations? Su Xian's gaze was gloomy and cold, and the furious intent in his eyes soared. Your family's daughter by a concubine is now the last disciple of Grandmaster Rong Yun. From now on, your Su manor will soar to the sky. In the capital, aside from the imperial family, who else could rival you? The person who said this was a high official from Nangong Liuyun's faction. Su Xian, having heard what was said, his complexion immediately darkened. It was as black as the bottom of a pot. However, before waiting for him to speak, another minister came over, smiling while happily saying, "Oh, Venerable Wang, to some extent, you don't know this, ah?" Before, Great General Su had expelled Su Luo from the Su family. "Oh, really?" Minister Wang's entire face was astonished, pretending to be puzzled. Naturally, it is true. At that time, our great General Su, in front of everyone, had personally crossed off Miss Su's name from the genealogical records. General Su, I didn't say anything incorrectly, right? Having heard what was said, Su Zian's complexion became ashen, then turned very red again. For a short while, it was extremely ugly. Get the fuck away. Su Zian fiercely sent a glare at Su Luo. He tossed these words out while fuming in rage and grinding his teeth. He then wanted to leave immediately. This loathsome girl, how is it that she survived? How did she become Grandmaster Rong Yun's last disciple? Was her existence only to slap him in the face? Recalling this, the rage in Su Zian's heart became even more vigorous. However, Su Zian might want to leave, but in fact, it was not that easy. Able to stand in the throne room, none of them was stupid. Among them were people that would change with the situation. They saw Su Luo's current status and were itching to rush up to fawningly stick to her. This was the so-called the wall will fall with everyone pushing, and Su Zian was the wall that toppled over. Compared to the identity of Grandmaster Rong Yun's last junior disciple, Su Zian with his identity as the Great General clearly was not enough. As a result, when Su Zian was taking large strides to leave while fuming in rage, suddenly, a leg extended out from the side. Thump. Su Zian, who had his chest out and head high, did not discover it and was tripped, directly staggering and nearly falling down. General Su, be careful. Bei Qining was very close to Su Zian. He loudly shouted with deep concern, extending his hands to pull him up. However, if he hadn't pulled, then it was good. By him pulling, Su Zian, who had now stood straight again, didn't know what happened, and he abruptly threw himself forward. Bang! Right after, Su Zian's but sat on the ground and he was sprawled out on his back. The stately and grand great general that protected the country was messed around with by the mourning court until he cut such a sorry figure. It really was slipping from on top of the world to greatly bowing to the ground. However, many people stealthily turned their face away. Nobody stepped forward to give Su Zian a hand. After all, few would provide help in someone's hour of need, but many would throw stones when someone is down. At this moment, Emperor Jing, who sat up high on the dragon throne, supported his slightly wrinkled forehead. He heavily slapped the armrest of the dragon throne. Disgraceful. Quickly help Great General Su up. The grand and stately Great General was toyed with until he fell like this. The face that was lost wasn't just Su Zian's face. There was also his face as the emperor. Now, Emperor Jing's heart was very complicated. Just like Su Zian, no matter what, he also would never have imagined that in the end, Su Luo would become the dark horse. The him right now was incomparably glad. Fortunately, at that time, he didn't have a brain fart and go to the Jade Lakesley family to send the betrothal gifts. Otherwise, his situation would be even more embarrassing than Su Zian's. The court eunuchs had already run over to help support Su Zian up. However, Su Luo lifted her hands to stop them. She leisurely walked to in front of Su Zian. From high above, she looked down at the him who had fallen and who was sitting on the ground. The corner of her mouth slowly perked up into a mocking and ridiculing arc. Su Zian, I heard you had expunged my name from the genealogical records? Su Zian's expression was extremely embarrassed. Su Luo's smiling expression was as beautiful as blooming summer flowers. She unhurriedly squatted down and met Su Zian's gaze at the same level. Chapter 778. Last Disciple of a Master, 7. In fact, I had known earlier that I am not your, Su Zian's, daughter. Originally, I was still tangled on how I could break away from Su Manor. I didn't expect that you would actually wordlessly and silently act. Frankly speaking, this action of yours, I really like, because it lessened a lot of troublesome things for me. For every sentence Su Luo said, Su Zian's face would darken a bit. Until when Su Luo finished speaking, Su Zian's face could be compared on equal terms to the darkness of night. Su Luo stood up and smoothed out the non-existent wrinkles in her dress. Afterwards, she turned around and left. It really was with one wave of the sleeves it dispersed, leaving without taking a bit of clouds. The high officials and ministers with their gazes normally so high, including Emperor Jing, all watched as Su Luo left. Alas, who would have imagined that the daughter of a concubine who was determined to be an idiot good for nothing would mature to this degree in a short time frame of less than 1 year? Everyone shook their heads for lack of better option. After leaving the imperial palace, Su Luo exhaled out a deep breath. Having been busy for so long and concentrating at such a high degree that her mind was stretched taut, now it appeared that this matter had finally come to an end. It was merely that Su Luo could feel faintly that Fairy Yin Xia was not this simple. In the future, they would certainly meet again. What are you thinking about? Under the sunlight, an out-of-the-ordinary, handsome and bright youth lifted his hand to pat Su Luo on the shoulder. When Su Luo turned around, she immediately saw Bai Qinying's mouthful of pearly white teeth. That bright and cheerful smiling expression was like sunshine. Thinking about where to stay tonight, Su Luo spread out her hands. She was expelled from the family by Su Zian. Naturally, she could not go back to Su Manor. Lan Xian and Anya Ming came and circled around her. Lan Xian was the first to speak. How about stay at my place? Bai Qinying slanted a glance at him. If you want to stay somewhere, it should be at my place. Lan Xian was unconvinced and said, that maid I had taken in on sister-in-law's behalf. Are you talking about Lu Luo? Su Luo frowned slightly. After she heard she was expelled from Su Manor by Su Zian, her first worry was about Lu Luo. This girl was faithful and devoted to her. How could Su Zian let her off easily? Little Basket 1. This time, I need to give many thanks to you, Su Luo said sincerely. Lan Xian, being so seriously thanked by her, was somewhat embarrassed at being thanked. Sister-in-law, you are being too much of a stranger. When second brother left, he especially warned us for sister-in-law to not suffer even a bit of hardship. This Nangong Lu Yun. Why was it that he left words to so many people? However, recalling how arrogant and pampered he was, telling each and every one of these people, a sweet feeling bubbled up from Su Luo's heart. However, the second day, before Su Luo could go look for Apothecary Long, the latter had voluntarily come to call on her. Junior sister apprentice, you have stayed really calm. Once he saw Su Luo, Apothecary Long's antisocial, rigid face unexpectedly perked up into a smile. It could clearly be seen that he was in a very good mood. Aren't we going to see the master 3 days later? Su Luo's face had a bewildered expression. Apothecary glared at her in annoyance. Your temper, how is it that it's neither fast nor slow? Do you know where master lives? Where? Su Luo really didn't know. Cloud Mist Peak. Apothecary Long directly glared at her. Where Cloud Mist Peak is, you ought to know, right? Su Luo was immediately struck dumb. Cloud Mist Peak, that was the #1 highest peak within the borders of Western Ling. The distance from the imperial capital in a horse carriage would require 3 days' time. Apothecary Long almost rolled his eyes. You didn't think our teacher would live in the capital, right? How is this possible? Su Luo recalled the first time she saw Grandmaster Rong Yun. That time, he easily and calmly walked down from the clouds as if walking down steps, as if the entire sky was within his control. That's right, this kind of him. How could he reside in a place like the bustling imperial capital? After exchanging greetings with Bai Qinying and them, Su Luo then jumped up on the dragon-scaled horse, leaving together with Apothecary Long. 1. Little Basket refers to Lan Xian. Because, when you take Lan Xian's name Lan and add the Chinese child, you get Little Basket. Same idea with Bai Qinying. Little Ing is translated as Little Shadows. Chapter 779, Cloud Mist Peak 1. The mountain peak was very straight and precipitous, with steep rock faces and sheer cliffs. An average person would absolutely not be able to go up. They left the horse at the foot of Cloud Mist Peak. Su Luo and Apothecary Long, dressed lightly without baggage, directly flew up the precipice. Worthy of being called Western Ling Empire's #1 peak. By a visual estimate, it was at least 10,000 meters or higher. On top of that, the peak was precipitous and slippery without a foothold. There were several times when Su Luo narrowly fell down. With Su Luo's strength at the 5th rank, it was still very difficult to climb up Cloud Mist Peak. Clearly, normally, no one would go up to disturb Grandmaster Rong Yun. Just merely this mountain peak had already cut off the overwhelming majority of people seeking medical treatment and asking for medicine. Finally, in the early morning of the 2nd day, when the sun rose in the east above the sea and the morning lights pierced through the clouds, filling the sky with hues of dawn, Su Luo finally climbed to the peak. So cold, she had just sucked in a breath when Su Luo felt her lungs nearly freeze. Cloud Mist Peak was quite high above sea level, therefore, the mountaintop was covered in snow. It was bitterly cold and frozen all year round. As far as the eye could see, it was a nice-looking white area. The sky was white, the ground was white, even the green plants were all covered with a thick layer of white snow. Let's go. Master lives just over there. Apothecary Long pointed up ahead, at that magnificently built manor. The manor was located in an open area on the mountain peak. The area it covered was very huge. At one glance, you couldn't see the end of it. Apothecary Long familiarly pushed open the door. While he walked inside, he also said to Su Luo at the same time, Master has a natural disposition of liking tranquility. He dislikes being disturbed by other people. Therefore, only Master and 2 chamberlains live here all year round. When Master teaches, he often teaches it only once. Master doesn't like people talking back and interrupting. Master. While Su Luo was observing the surroundings, she also silently stored what Apothecary Long was saying in her heart. Soon afterwards, Apothecary Long introduced Su Luo to the person in the study. Grandmaster Rong Yun calmly sat on a circular red sandalwood chair behind a long table with his back to Su Luo. Master, before Apothecary Long could finish speaking, Grandmaster Rong Yun had raised his right hand. Immediately, Apothecary Long became silent. You go out first. A hint of coldness faintly penetrated through Grandmaster Rong Yun's voice. It seemed that Master's mood today was not so good. Apothecary Long looked at Su Luo with sympathy. Then, he obediently walked out and even quietly closed the thick wooden door behind him. After Apothecary Long left, there was a moment of silence in the study. Grandmaster Rong Yun was dressed in a wide white brocade gown, a light headband binding up his soft, silky hair. His entire person gave off an enigmatic and cold noble aura. Su Luo could not guess Grandmaster Rong Yun's age. If she was to judge based on looks, he was just a bit older than Nangong Lu Yun and nothing more. Just when Su Luo was letting her imagination run wild, suddenly, Grandmaster Rong Yun turned his chair around. His pair of meaningful deep clear eyes were coldly staring at Su Luo. His sword-like eyebrows were pinched up, seeming to be displeased. Su Luo was secretly puzzled in her heart. She should not have offended him anywhere, right? Why would he be staring at her with such a disdainful gaze? Master being above, disciple pays her respects. Finished talking, Su Luo was just about to make her salutations. However, Grandmaster Rong Yun frowned and raised his hands to prevent her from such action. This title, I dare not accept. Grandmaster Rong Yun's voice was ice-cold like frost. I haven't formally accepted you as my disciple. A thread of doubt and puzzlement flashed through Su Luo's heart. What did Grandmaster Rong Yun mean? Obviously, that very day in the throne room, he personally said he would accept her as his disciple. Why didn't he acknowledge it now? Moreover, he treated her with a deliberate alienation. According to Su Luo's original temperament, how could she let other people admonish her while pointing at her nose? However, facing this expert, Su Luo didn't dare to be rash. He was worth her humbling her attitude. Great master. Chapter 780, Cloud Mist Peak, 2. Grandmaster Rong Yun slanted her an icy glance. His tone was indifferent and ice-cold. To tell you the truth, in fact, I don't have a bit of desire to accept you as a disciple because your natural aptitude is too lacking. Up till now you are still only an elementary apothecary. Too embarrassing. Su Luo's face tightened. It's not like this was the first time that he found out she was an elementary apothecary. Why on earth would he start to mock her now? If it was not for the Li family's girl being snatched away by little Yin, it would have never ended up being you. You should remember this point. Su Luo's face was unbearably hot and anxious, a scorchingly red-hot color appearing. In her previous life and current life, she had never had a person slap her face like this. Grandmaster Rong Yun would just see her as this unworthy? Su Luo tightly pursed her lips and did her utmost to suppress a sarcastic repartee. However, she had already thoroughly offended the Jade Lakesley family. If she was also expelled by Grandmaster Rong Yun from his door, in the future, on this continent, it could be said that every step would be challenging. Since she had arrived on this continent, she should abide by the rules here. Su Luo bit her lower lip and slowly suppressed the hot fury that sprung up. Grandmaster Rong Yun saw Su Luo lower her head and eyes and couldn't help but to give a heavy snort. I'll give you 3 months' time. If your performance is not good, this apothecary can kick you out at any time. Su Luo pursed her lips, an angry thought flashing through her eyes. Didn't you look down upon me? Didn't you favor Li Yao Yao very much? Then, I'll prove it for you to see. This young lady's natural aptitude is 100 times better than Li Yao Yao's. But on her face, Su Luo only showed a clear and shallow smiling expression. She bowed towards Grandmaster Rong Yun. Master's lecture is right. Disciple has memorized this in her heart. Saying this, Su Luo turned around and walked out. And at this moment, a shadow that was hidden in the corner that was nearly invisible, quick as lightning, disappeared without a trace. Grandmaster Rong Yun, from the corner of his eyes, shot a glance towards the rapidly leaving shadow, a touch of chilliness flashing through his eyes. Apothecary Long searched the entire manor and couldn't find Su Luo. Finally, he saw her figure on the rooftop. What? Been admonished by Master? Apothecary Long sat by her side, his tone carrying a thread of deep concern. Su Luo frowned, looked at Apothecary Long, and with some doubt, said, Does Master have a split personality? Eh? Apothecary expressed that he did not understand. This sentence, when dismantled, he knew every word, but put together, he did not understand their meaning. Forget it, even if I explain it, you wouldn't understand. Su Luo, fidgeting, waved her hand. Only the doubt in her heart still hadn't lessened. Grandmaster Rong Yun really was a strange person. Before, in the throne room, even though he was cold as ice to her, but she could sense faintly that Grandmaster Rong Yun favored her. But just now, he ruthlessly sliced and peeled off a layer of her skin, so ice-cold as if a stranger. Su Luo helplessly sent a glare at Apothecary Long. Your master is really too strange. He's also your master, oh. Apothecary said with a smile. Who knows for sure? Maybe in less than 3 months, I would be kicked out? Seeing Apothecary Long wanted to ask, but Su Luo instead shook her head. You should rest assured, since I came here, I would not let myself be kicked out. Very quickly, Apothecary went down the mountain and left. And Su Luo also started the very long and arduous period of her life, cultivating to be an apothecary. Just based on her heart and opinion, Grandmaster was pretty good at giving lessons. After arriving on this continent, Su Luo had always read and studied on her own. Occasionally, she would ask for guidance from Apothecary Long. She had never systematically learned the knowledge of an apothecary. Therefore, her foundation was not very firm. The first lesson, when Grandmaster Rong Yun asked questions to test Su Luo, soon after, his face turned black. Before, the second exam in the throne room, you had passed with full marks. Now, it seems that even such an easy question, you cannot answer. A cold aura flashed through Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes. With a bang sound, the writing brush was tossed to the floor. What the heck did you learn before? Chapter 781, Cloud Mist Peak, 3. My Rongyun's disciple can't even understand records of herbal medicine. If this was spread out, it is simply a disgrace. Grandmaster Rongyun coldly snorted. What is the use of being full of tricks? Within 3 days, you must memorize and thoroughly understand records of herbal medicine book. Finished talking and having left this sentence behind, Grandmaster Rongyun turned around and left. A thread of cloudiness flashed in Su Luo's eyes. The hands beside her body were clenched into fists. Humph! This pretty bright but blind person's eyes of a beautiful master was really a drag. She absolutely would prove it for him to see that she, Su Luo, need not depend on a bag of tricks and could still do well. Only, this book of records of herbal medicine was thick as a Chinese dictionary, just like a brick poking out over there. So thick, and within 3 days? This harsh master was really set on the idea of kicking her off the mountain. It was a pity her master still didn't know that she had a space that slowed down time by a tenfold. Su Luo, not saying any further, held up that big brick-sized book and returned to her residence. In terms of a person's basic needs, Grandmaster Rongyun didn't treat her unfairly at all. On the mountain, aside from Grandmaster Rongyun and Su Luo, there were still 2 other individuals. These 2 individuals were Grandmaster Rongyun's personal chamberlains. The 2 of them were twins. One was Ziran and the other was Ziyu. Ziran seemed gentle and mild. Normally, he was in charge of Grandmaster's diet and other needs. Ziyu was ice-cold and indifferent. Normally, he followed Grandmaster closely. He was Grandmaster's personal bodyguard. After Su Luo arrived, Ziran personally arranged a room for her. This was an independent small courtyard. The plants were placed in a serene pattern with flying, colored glass at the edges. It seemed delicate and exquisite. Moreover, the most important thing was, Su Luo faintly sensed that the spiritual power was richer in this place than anywhere else. In addition, what astonished Su Luo was, compared to Ziran and Ziyu, her courtyard was the closest to the Grandmaster's. At that time, Ziran, while smiling, said, "This way, it's easy for little junior sister to seek guidance on Master's lessons." Ziran and Ziyu were taken in and cared by Grandmaster Rongyun since they were little. They were accepted as outer court disciples. They weren't, in a true sense, chamberlains at all. Even though Su Luo felt that Ziran's words sounded reasonable, but her heart had a faint strange feeling. But as a newcomer, the situation was still unclear to her. Therefore, Su Luo accepted these arrangements with a smile and did not speak. Only, Su Luo, who was careful and cautious, still saw the quick flash of amazement in Ziran's eyes. Amazement? What was Ziran amazed about? Was it this courtyard? Su Luo meticulously examined this courtyard up and down thoroughly once over, but she did not find any anomaly. Forget about it. Since she was here, she should make herself comfortable. She ought to properly learn the methods of an apothecary, as it was the right thing to do. She definitely would not want to be looked down upon by the beautiful master. After instructing Ziran not to come and disturb her, Su Luo closed the room tightly. Afterwards, in a meditation posture, she sat cross-legged on her bed. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time passed very quickly. Night and day silently alternated. On the final day, Su Luo directly tossed that records of herbal medicine book to the side and shouted loudly, "So sleepy I'm about to die." Afterwards, her head leaned to the side, directly laying on the meadow and immediately falling asleep. The little divine dragon quietly sprawled by Su Luo's head. Seeing little master tired to this degree, a touch of heartache flashed across his face. He tilted his head and thought for a bit. Afterwards, he came over holding a cup in his 2 little paws. The cup was filled with high-grade celestial spirit water. The little divine dragon fed it to Su Luo to drink. Afterwards, his soft body curled into a small ball and rolled into Su Luo's embrace. Then, he contentedly and without making a movement, accompanied her to sleep. Unknowingly, 30 days of time passed just like this. Naturally, only 3 days' time had passed outside. The author keeps switching from 110 to 1:100 when saying how the time in Su Luo's space functions. For those people who read ahead and still remember, because I don't, when is her space upgraded next? To what ratio? Because based on that, I want to be consistent on, is it 110 or 1:100 now? Please let me know in comments section. Thanks in advance. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.